Chapter 577. Cherry Blossom Gauze glanced at the dying, true monarch flame demon, then quickly descended to the ground with Silver Bottle. The only thing Cherry Blossom Gauze could think of at this moment was to devour this demonic cultivator and recover as much as possible. Although the demonic cultivator in the sky was powerful, he was still no match for Cherry Blossom Gauze at her peak. Cherry Blossom Gauze looked coldly at true monarch flame demon. Her slender hand formed a claw and grabbed at the top of true monarch flame demon's head. "You dare!" True monarch flame demon roared. But Cherry Blossom Gauze turned a deaf ear to him. Her claw directly pierced through true monarch flame demon's head. True monarch flame demon shriveled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, he was reduced to a pile of dried bones. A raging gust of wind blew past, disappearing without a trace. As for true monarch flame demon's primordial spirit, it was completely devoured by Cherry Blossom Gauze without leaving a single trace behind. The soul and vitality of a divine transformation cultivator were as boundless as the sea. Ever since Cherry Blossom Gauze became 13 Spectre, she had never been this relaxed. Her injuries were completely healed. Her disguised face gradually returned to its original appearance under the influence of the rising ghostly aura. Using the word beautiful to describe Cherry Blossom Gauze's appearance was far from enough. If there was a flaw in her face, it would be that she was exceedingly white. She was so white that not a single trace of blood could be seen. This was perhaps the greatest proof that Cherry Blossom Gauze wasn't human. Excluding this point, Cherry Blossom Gauze looked like a fairy who had fallen from grace. The word ghost had nothing to do with her at all. After devouring the soul of a divine transformation cultivator, Cherry Blossom Gauze still hadn't recovered to her peak state. But compared to when she was 13 Spectre, she was much stronger. She was almost at the late stage of divine transformation. "Silver Bottle, stand further away. I'm going to help. The battle below will be very intense. Don't touch me." Cherry Blossom Gauze's hollow voice rang out. Silver Bottle stared at the Cherry Blossom Gauze in a daze. In an instant, it became a stranger. It was different. It was completely different. "Oh," Silver Bottle responded subconsciously and ran away with a worried look. In the void, Li Daocheng's violent attacks were still ongoing. His entire body was wrapped in blue-gold sparks and crackling noises. Wen Mayan seemed to be as immovable as a mountain, but in fact Li Daocheng's every attack would have a huge impact on him. The power of Young Lightning was the nemesis of all dark ghosts and demonic creatures. Human demonic cultivators were no exception. In terms of cultivation, Wen Mayan was far above Li Daocheng, but the latter's attacks could still cause great damage to the former. It could even be fatal. Wen Mayan didn't dare to be careless, so he had been carefully defending himself. As long as Li Daocheng didn't hit his weak spot and didn't let the lightning enter his body, he would be invincible. Li Daocheng, on the other hand, was different. Every attack would consume a lot of primary energy, which was released by burning Yuanying's energy. Li Daocheng seemed to be crazy, but he hadn't lost his mind. He had no other choice now. Li Daocheng couldn't think of a better way to deal with this demonic cultivator who was almost at the divine transformation stage. Li Daocheng's last trump card was a level 17 Ice Talisman. The reason why he hadn't used it yet was because Li Daocheng knew that it might not be able to cause fatal damage to this demonic cultivator. Therefore, Li Daocheng was waiting for the best opportunity, an opportunity when his opponent was careless. He could only maximize the damage of the level 17 Ice Talisman when he was unprepared. If he couldn't achieve such an effect, he might as well not use it. As time passed, Li Daocheng became a little anxious. Burning Yuanying was very harmful to his body. However, because of Li Daocheng's profound foundation and the ancient hot-blooded upgrader, burning some of the power of his primordial spirit was not unbearable. However, if he continued burning endlessly, even if Li Daocheng had a rare treasure, he would run out of oil, become disabled, or even die. In Li Daocheng's spiritual sense, half of the Yuanying's arm had been burned, and the golden light had dimmed. Li Daochong could only burn an entire arm at most. If he exceeded this limit, Li Daochong's cultivation would drop and even hurt his foundation. When Mayan had been passively taking the beating, and he was a little annoyed. Although he still had the upper hand, even though he was passively taking the beating, he was still the defensive side after all. The ant in front of him was clearly so insignificant, but when Mayan couldn't do anything. The power of the yang lightning on this guy made When Mayan afraid. This was a natural fear. Even though when Mayan was annoyed, he didn't dare to attack rashly. This was because his opponent was fighting without any regard for his life. It was very likely that he was baiting him to attack, so that he could exchange injuries. This was like a stray dog. An adult man could easily kill it, but would he dare to be bitten? The power of the yang lightning was not much different from rabies to fiendish cultivators. If it entered the body carelessly, it would be difficult to get rid of it. If it went deep into the primordial spirit, it could even be fatal. When Mayan, who had always been careful, had to suppress the anger in his heart. His defense was watertight. Even if he found his opponent's weakness, he would not counterattack. He had to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Li Daochong was rebounded again. His eyes narrowed, and the Tsang ink in his hand buzzed. On the 78th impact, Li Daochong's body was filled with power. The third move of the Great Void Sword technique. Dao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, and 3 begets all things. The third move of the Great Void. All things return to the origin. Li Daochong forcibly performed the third move of the Great Void. In fact, with his current ability, he was still unable to perform it. However, he couldn't care less now. The Great Void carried the power of the yang lightning and cut a hole in the void. It turned into a spatial blade and shot towards When Mayan. Cut the void? How is that possible? When Mayan was shocked. A cultivator in the mid-stage of the Yuanying realm could actually comprehend the realm that only void refinement realm cultivators could comprehend. When Mayan couldn't believe that there was such a monster in the world. However, the truth was right in front of him. He had to believe it. When Mayan felt a chill down his spine. He was actually frightened by a cultivator in the mid-stage of the Yuanying realm. When Mayan's body instantly changed. The bloodline of a fiend beast was activated without reservation. The gentle and elegant scholar instantly turned into a ferocious, human-shaped fiend god. His body was covered in scales, and his fangs were deep in his mouth. His body was more than twice as large. With the devil's sword in his hand, When Mayan shouted softly, "Enchantment, heaven, prohibition." A round of black light slashed out. Boom! The sword light of the Great Void that cut the void collided with the black sword light. The void exploded. The area within a few hundred kilometers trembled violently. The ground shook violently, as if there was an earthquake. If one looked at the blizzard planet from the starry sky, one could clearly see a flash of brilliance in a certain area. It was as if a huge meteor had hit the planet. The clouds in that area were scattered. Just as Cherry Blossom Gauze was about to make a move, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned around and shot towards Silver Bottle, hugging the little girl tightly in her arms. The terrifying shockwave disappeared after a few seconds. However, the destructive power it caused was shocking. The terrain within a few hundred kilometers had changed. This mountain range had completely disappeared. The thick clouds in the sky disappeared. The blizzard planet also disappeared without a trace. For thousands of years, there had never been sunlight on the blizzard planet. However, at this moment, the area was filled with sunlight. There were no clouds in the sky, and the sky was white. In the void, When Mayan, who had turned into a fiend god, was suspended there. There were not many changes. As for Li Daochong, there were still traces of him. In the ruins more than 10 kilometers away, Li Daochong was lying inside. His face was covered in dust. The Great Void's third sword had not reached its peak. Li Daochong smiled bitterly. His entire body was in pain. There was no trace of life in his body. Yuanying's left arm had disappeared. He had become a one-armed Yuanying. Li Daochong spat out a mouthful of blood. His consciousness gradually became blurry. He forced himself to stay awake. Li Daochong looked at When Mayan in the distance. The coldness in his eyes became more intense. This person must die. Just as Li Daochong was about to burn Yuanying again, an ethereal and pleasant female voice suddenly sounded in his mind. However, the voice was anxious and worried. Don't. Who? Why are you in my sea of consciousness? Li Daochong was stunned. Human, there's no time to explain. Don't burn Yuanying anymore. You'll die. Quickly absorb my spiritual energy. I'll help you recover, the ethereal female voice said without any explanation. Li Daochong's eyes suddenly flashed. You are human, quick. I know who you are. Why are you in my body? How come I didn't know all this time? Human, now is not the time to chat. Quickly absorb my spiritual energy. All right, then let's absorb some. Li Daochong grinned. In the silence, Li Daochong's weak body gradually recovered some strength. Why are you stopping? Absorb more. No need. If you absorb more, you'll hurt yourself. No, I'm a spirit. As long as I have my essence, I won't die. I won't fall for it. Do you want to sacrifice yourself? No way. As long as I, Li Daochong, am alive, I won't let anyone die for me. I'm not a human. Li Daochong didn't say anything else. He looked at the void. Recovering a bit of vitality was of no help in defeating the demonic cultivator in the sky. When Mayan looked at Li Daochong, who was lying in the ruins, his face was ferocious, and his scales were smoking. For a moment, when Mayan felt like he was on the verge of death. It hurts, when Mayan muttered as he looked at his charred palm. Chapter 578. When Mayan hadn't felt such pain for many years. When he felt it again, the culprit was actually a mid-stage Yuanying cultivator. When Mayan felt that he had lost all his face. Fortunately, no one saw this scene. Otherwise, his reputation in the demon sect would definitely be ruined. Bastard, it's too easy to kill you. I'm going to grind your bones to dust, when Mayan said with a gloomy expression. With that, when Mayan suddenly moved and was about to rush in Li Daochong's direction. At this moment, when Mayan felt that something was wrong, phantoms kept forming in the void around him, condensing into thousands of identical women around him. What the hell? When Mayan was stunned, Cherry Blossom Gauze shouted from below, Pilgrimage of the 10,000 Nether. Cherry Blossom Gauze had used this move against Li Daochong on 13 Spectre. At that time, she had almost killed Li Daochong. At this moment, Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't hold back and attacked with all her strength. She knew that if she held back, there would be no after. Cherry Blossom Gauze even used the primordial nether chi in her nether soul pill. When Mayan's ferocious eyes twitched violently, he had never seen such a strange move before. These women that appeared around him weren't phantoms, but real. Each of them seemed to be real, but at the same time, they didn't seem to be. Cherry Blossom Gauze used all her strength to summon the pilgrimage of the 10,000 Nether. She hugged the silver bottle and rushed toward Li Daochong. Thousands of white figures in the void gathered to form a huge white figure, rushing toward Wen Mayan with a huge pressure. Deliberately mystifying things. Wen Mayan snorted. On the surface, Wen Mayan looked disdainful, but in reality, his entire body was surging with devil chi. Wen Mayan didn't dare to be careless. His devil body grew bigger again, and 2 bone spurs extended from his back. He looked even more terrifying, like a monster that had jumped out of the abyss. At the same time, Cherry Blossom Gauze appeared in front of Li Daochong with a silver bottle and grabbed Li Daochong without any explanation. Cherry Blossom Gauze paid the price of burning his nether essence to escape. Trying to escape? Dream on. Well, mine growled. He threw a punch at the 100-meter-tall white figure. Enchanted heaven-breaking fist. The pilgrimage of the myriad underworld collided with the demonic fist, resulting in an ear-splitting boom. Space seemed to be on the verge of being torn apart. The giant white shadow was dispersed by Wen Mayan's punch, and he fell to the ground like a meteor. Boom! A huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers appeared on the ground. Whoosh! Wen Mayan flew out of the pit in an instant. His devil body wasn't injured at all, but the bones in his right fist were twisted and several of his hand bones were broken. Looking at his right hand, the anger in Mayan's eyes intensified. The devil aura in his body churned, and the broken bones quickly recovered. His twisted hand returned to its original state at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Cherry Blossom Gauze had already taken Li Daochong and the silver bottle 100 kilometers away. When Mayan's demonic sword array was only effective underground, it couldn't stop them in the air. When Mayan glanced into the distance, with a wave of his hand, the 108 demonic swords quickly returned and merged into a single great demonic sword. The sword was more than 3 meters long and 2 feet wide. It was grayish-silver in color and had sharp edges on both sides. Together with Mayan's devil body, he looked like a demonic god had descended. "Do you think you can escape?" Mayan sneered. As soon as he finished speaking, his devil body shot out like a meteor with a bang. The void seemed to be pierced through. Cherry Blossom Gauze's speed was almost 1/3 of Li Daochong's 1,000 sound escape. This speed was already shocking enough. In the blink of an eye, he was hundreds of kilometers away. However, before Cherry Blossom Gauze could catch her breath, the huge wave of demonic chi behind her was already moving at high speed. The distance between them was shrinking at an alarming speed. "Ingsha, take the silver bottle and leave. I'll stop him." Li Daochong's eyes were filled with determination. "Mr. Li, how long can you stop him in your current state?" "1 second." Cherry Blossom Gauze smiled bitterly. Li Daochong still wanted to say something, but Cherry Blossom Gauze suddenly made a sharp turn and dove toward the ground. It plunged into the snow. This time, it wasn't a cave. To Cherry Blossom Gauze, Li Daochong couldn't die. If he died, she would die. After landing, Cherry Blossom Gauze stretched out her hand. A pyramid-shaped object appeared in her hand. She tossed it lightly. The pyramid landed in the snow, far away, and instantly grew into a 10-meter-tall, 10-meter-wide pyramid house. Cherry Blossom Gauze silently chanted an incantation. A door appeared in the pyramid. She then led Li Daochong and the silver bottle into it. There was nothing special inside the pyramid. It was an independent space with some simple daily necessities. "What's this?" Li Daochong looked around and asked. "This is the Golden Horn Palace that I snatched from a void refinement realm cultivator 10,000 years ago. It's made of gung metal and has extremely strong defensive power. Ordinary void refinement realm cultivators won't be able to break it," Luo Ingsha replied. The Golden Horn Palace was Cherry Blossom Gauze's last hope. To put it bluntly, it was a Dharma treasure in the shape of a turtle shell. Li Daochong smiled bitterly. He didn't believe that this thing could withstand the attack of the demonic cultivator. Boom! There was a loud noise. The triangular palace shook violently. The silver bottle staggered and fell to the ground. Li Daochong spat out a mouthful of blood. Only the Cherry Blossom Gauze could barely withstand the violent attack. Mayan, who was chasing after them, slashed his sword down as soon as he saw the triangular palace. Mayan didn't hold back at all. If it hit the snowstorm star, it was enough to leave a deep scar on the planet that could be seen clearly in the starry sky. Surprisingly, he was unable to split the triangular object into 2 halves. Mayan was slightly surprised. He scanned the triangular palace with his demonic perception and sneered, "So it's gung metal." With that, Mayan slashed with his demonic sword again. Boom! The triangular palace shook violently again. Li Daochong spat out another mouthful of blood. He felt dizzy. This time, the silver bottle fainted. Li Daochong scanned with his psychic power and confirmed that the silver bottle was fine. He then heaved a sigh of relief. Under the 2 fierce attacks, the triangular palace sank deep into the ground. The ground around it exploded, forming a large pit. Mayan's 2 consecutive slashes only left 2 slash marks on the triangular palace. His anger rose without reason. "Do you think everything will be fine if you hide in your turtle shell? I'll catch you like a turtle in a jar." "Ha ha!" Boom, boom, boom. Mayan's voice sounded like thunder in the triangular palace. It shook the Cherry Blossom Gauze and Li Daochong until they felt dizzy. Before the deafening sound faded, the triangular palace shook violently as if it was hit by a strong earthquake. Bang, bang. Every time it vibrated, a high-frequency sound would be heard. Not to mention the seriously injured Li Daochong. Even the cherry blossom gauze couldn't withstand it. Puff! Li Daochong spat out another mouthful of blood. He couldn't stand anymore and fell to the ground. His consciousness gradually blurred. Boom, boom, boom. When Mayan seemed to have gone berserk, he crazily attacked the triangular palace. Slash after slash. Each slash would leave a deep slash mark on the triangular palace. The triangular palace kept sinking. The large pit that was forcefully smashed expanded. After more than 10 slashes, the diameter was more than 1,000 meters. Cherry Blossom Gauze looked at Li Daochong lying on the ground and then glanced at the unconscious silver bottle. She sighed softly and revealed a bitter smile on her beautiful face. She was the great Wu Ho of the Rakshas estate. She used to be under one ghost and above 10,000 ghosts. How glorious was she? Before she fell into a deep sleep, even Xing Paoluo was somewhat afraid of her. When she woke up, she thought that she could quickly recover her former glory. She didn't expect that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. She actually fell to this state. She was forced into a corner by a demonic cultivator. Of course, it was Li Daochong who caused all this. Cherry Blossom Gauze looked at Li Daochong, who was still conscious but on the verge of death. There was an extremely complicated light in her beautiful eyes. If Li Daochong hadn't interfered when she woke up, her cultivation wouldn't have fallen so much. Later, her plan to instigate the Scarlet Sun planet was also ruined by this brat. This directly caused Cherry Blossom Gauze to almost lose her mind. Later on, she launched a large-scale attack on the Rakshas estate. This was actually part of the reason. On 13 Spectre, Cherry Blossom Gauze thought that she could resolve this grudge. She didn't expect that there would be problems behind her. In order to protect her, Xing Paoluo directly sold her to the Netherworld tribe of Jiuyo. He even directly sent the Nether Demon to capture her. In a freak combination of factors, and as if it was arranged by fate, she was destined to be defeated by Li Daochong this time. As long as Li Daochong was around, she could forget about gaining any advantage. She was destined to be defeated. Not only did she not manage to defeat Li Daochong in the Battle of 13 Spectre, but she had also become his sole servant. Cherry Blossom Gauze was unwilling, but there was nothing she could do. Li Daochong, did this queen really wake up for you? Cherry Blossom Gauze recalled everything that had happened after she woke up. Suddenly, she looked at Li Daochong with a complicated gaze and muttered to herself, forget it, forget it. No matter what, this queen doesn't want to die. I'll let you have it easy. Cherry Blossom Gauze hesitated for a moment. When another strong tremor occurred, the last bit of hesitation in her eyes disappeared. Sakura Sha lifted her slender, jade-like hands. She lifted her clothes and slowly undid her belt. Her robes made of extreme crystals slowly fell off, revealing her jade-white shoulders and seductive collarbones that could captivate all living beings. It was just that no one had the fortune to see such a beautiful scene. A body that could be said to be perfect and flawless was slowly exposed. Willowy waist, perky buttocks, full breasts, and long legs. No beautiful words were enough to describe Cherry Blossom Gauze's flawless body. Even the fairies in the sky paled in comparison. It was hard to imagine that this was a female ghost with a spirit body. When things reach an extreme, they can only move in the opposite direction. Cherry Blossom Gauze was the epitome of this saying. It was no wonder that the Prince of Jiuyo Kingdom of Hell would fancy Cherry Blossom Gauze. Who wouldn't like such a beauty with spirit energy? Cherry Blossom Gauze bent down and straddled Li Daochong's body. Her slender hands climbed up his chest and gently undid Li Daochong's clothes. At this moment, the violent tremors and deafening sounds behind them seemed to have disappeared. Cherry Blossom Gauze was immersed in her own world. Even Wu Ho would be nervous when she revealed herself. When Li Daochong was naked, Cherry Blossom Gauze's breathing became rapid uncontrollably. This is... Li Daochong spat out 3 words with difficulty. He looked at Cherry Blossom Gauze in confusion. Cherry Blossom Gauz's slender index finger pressed against Li Daocheng's lips. She buried her head next to his ear and breathed. Don't talk, Mr. Li. Don't you humans have a classic saying? Every second of the night is worth 1,000 gold. Enjoy it. Li Daocheng's blurred consciousness quivered when the cold body pressed against him. He regained some consciousness. Li Daocheng obviously knew what Cherry Blossom Gauze was going to do. But why would she do such a thing at a time like this? You want to do this before you die? Li Daocheng asked out of nowhere. Uffed. Cherry Blossom Gauze, who was about to kiss Li Daocheng's lips, couldn't help but laugh out loud. A mouthful of fragrant breath blew onto Li Daocheng's face. Yes, I want to do this before I die. Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't explain. She said in a coquettish tone, after saying that her cold and moist lips were attached to Li Daocheng's blood-stained lips. Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't care about the bloodstains at all. Instead, she stuck out her red tongue and licked it as if she was eating ice cream. Chapter 579. Soft and boneless, cool and gentle. These were all Li Daocheng felt at this moment. He couldn't move and was at the mercy of Cherry Blossom Gauze. His first time in this world was under such circumstances and in such a way. Li Daocheng didn't know if he should be happy or sad. Cherry Blossom Gauze licked the blood off Li Daocheng's lips and sucked in a breath. The two bodies of completely different attributes slowly merged together. The feeling of having each other was incomparably stimulating. Cherry Blossom Gauze couldn't help but murmur softly. Li Daocheng only felt his lower abdomen heat up. At this moment, time seemed to stop. Soon, Li Daocheng felt a trace of strength return to him. However, his body was getting hotter and hotter. He had an urge to release it. The passage of time became blurry. It seemed like only a few seconds had passed, but it also seemed like a long time. Just like that, Li Daocheng and Cherry Blossom Gauze were entwined together, until a familiar notification sounded in his sea of consciousness. Beep. Soul Essence Pill discovered. Soul Power converted. Spirit Energy obtained. Li Daocheng's body trembled slightly. The spirit energy in the void in his body was replenished at an astonishing speed. It flowed continuously and endlessly. After losing an arm, the weakened Sun Nascent's soul quickly regained its vigor. The arm that Li Daocheng had burned away quickly grew back. Li Daocheng let out a comfortable moan. His spirit body had entered a state of perfection. His skin was sparkling and translucent. The wounds on his body disappeared. Li Daocheng finally understood why Cherry Blossom Gauze did this. She was transferring her soul essence pill to him. As the two of them intertwined, they emitted a strange protective shield that spread throughout the triangular hall. Cherry Blossom Gauze thought that her vitality would be greatly damaged this time. However, she didn't expect the spirit energy from Li Daocheng's body to be so boundless. What's going on? Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't understand and didn't have the time to investigate. She could only absorb the spirit energy that came back to her like a thirst. Cherry Blossom Gauze's injuries quickly recovered. After giving up the soul essence pill, Cherry Blossom Gauze's realm should have dropped drastically. She might even become a witch ghost, not even a grand wizard ghost. However, he did not notice such a thing. For some reason, Li Daocheng's body contained a large amount of death aura. This death energy was actually the remnants of the nether ghosts that Li Daocheng had absorbed after awakening. Host levels, level 20th excess level. Levels, spirit energy. S-body's spirit energies grew continuously levels spirit energies. The spiritual chi didn't show any signs of weakening at all. It continued to nourish Li Daocheng's body, nascent soul, and immortal will. Host is leveled up to level 27. A few minutes later, Li Daocheng once again heard the notification from the hot-blooded upgrader. He had entered Yuanying's peak state in one fell swoop. This was the first time Li Daocheng had leveled up twice in a row after waking up. Just when Li Daocheng thought that the increase of spiritual energy would gradually slow down or even stop, the increase of spiritual energy became even more crazy. The Yuanying in Li Daocheng's body grew from 10 inches to half the size of a human, and it still showed no signs of stopping. It was the same for Cherry Blossom Gauze. After offering up his most precious Nether Soul Origin pill, not only did his cultivation not drop, he even received a great boost. Even when the Cherry Blossom Gauze was soaked in the blood pool, it could not achieve this effect. Li Daocheng was like a great tonic. Cherry Blossom Gauze's mood gradually changed from melancholy to passion, her willowy waist wriggling. A new Nether Soul Essence pill quickly formed in Cherry Blossom Gauze's body. Not long after, Cherry Blossom Gauze transformed into Wuho's form. She was no longer the ghost of the Grand Wizard. Instead, she was enveloped by a layer of dim light. Cherry Blossom Gauze looked at Li Daocheng in surprise. Was this a blessing in disguise? Cherry Blossom Gauze had never thought that she would have a dual cultivation partner. In fact, there was no such thing in the Hades. Only human cultivators had such a thing. But Li Daocheng and he seemed to have some kind of complementing each other. They were originally two completely opposite attributes, but they could actually complement each other. What kind of principle was this? Even though Cherry Blossom Gauze had a long lifespan, she could not understand the reason behind it. Li Daocheng continued to level up. With a buzzing sound in his head, Yuanying grew to a height of 4 feet, more than half the height of a normal person. Host has leveled up to level 28. Li Daocheng had leveled up to the early stage of the soul formation stage. The space in his dantian had expanded by more than 10 times. Yuanying was no longer Yuanying. Instead, he was half a primordial soul. He was exactly the same as his original body, but his height was still lacking. The spirit chi was pure and clean. Li Daocheng could not even feel the slightest bit of rejection. His divine sense could almost materialize. A casual thought could cover an area of more than 1,000 kilometers. If he focused his divine sense into a line, it could cover a distance of more than 10,000 kilometers and detect subtle movements in the distance. As long as Li Daocheng wanted to, he could see through a cultivation planet. Li Daocheng was shocked to see that he had leveled up 3 times in a row. In the beginning, he was a little worried that his cultivation level would become unstable if he leveled up too quickly. However, such a thing did not happen. Not only was his leveling up fast, but it was also as stable as a mountain. It was as if Li Daocheng had always been in this realm. He did not need to comprehend it or consolidate it. It was just there innate. Not only did the injuries on Li Daocheng's body disappear without a trace, there was not even a trace of blood left. Could this be dual cultivation? Cherry Blossom Gauze's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Now she finally understood why human cultivators had to find a dual cultivation partner. It turned out that dual cultivation was really faster than single cultivation. Just like that, Li Daocheng and Cherry Blossom Gauze blended together. At first, they were confused and did not know what to do. Gradually, they accepted each other, and then they were passionate about each other. Outside the triangular hall, Mayan naturally did not know what was going on inside. He kept attacking the triangular hall with the demon sword in his hand. He only wanted to split the tortoise shell in half. However, after dozens of attacks, other than leaving countless slash marks on the outside of the triangular hall, he could not split it open. What made Mayan feel even more strange was that the tortoise shell had a tendency to harden. After a few more slashes, there was a feeling that it could not be shaken. It was as if it was filled with air. Mayan felt a trace of madness. He raised the demon's sword in his hand, and a fierce look flashed across his face. In fact, Mayan did not dare to use his true power. He was worried that if he used too much strength, he would kill the female cultivator too. The demonic orb was his only goal. However, after attacking for a long time without success, Mayan's patience had been completely worn out, he could not do anything to the triangular tortoise shell in front of him. Enchantment Sky Breaker. Mayan shouted softly, the demon's sword in his hand brought about 1,000 meters of black light and slashed down. Boom! Amazing skill. This sword seemed to split the heavens and the earth. A sword scar that was more than a few hundred kilometers long and bottomless appeared on Blizzard Star. The sword scar started from the center of the huge pit where the triangular hall was located. Crack, crack! The top of the triangular hall finally could not withstand such a terrifying force and cracked open. When Mayan's gloomy face finally revealed a cold smile. This tortoise was finally caught by him. When Mayan swooped down, just as he was about to rush into the triangular hall, a ray of Tsang ink light suddenly shot out from inside. Is this your final struggle? When Mayan said disdainfully and slashed out with the demon's sword in his hand. Boom! With a loud bang, when Mayan flew backward like a cannonball. He spat out a mouthful of black blood. What? When Mayan's expression was one of shock and disbelief. Swoosh! A green light flew out from the triangular hall. Li Daocheng floated in the void with his hands behind his back and looked at Wen Mayan indifferently. Another ray of white light shot out from the triangular hall. At the same time, another ray of white light slashed out. Wen Mayan hurriedly blocked and was sent flying again. He fell to the ground and smashed a huge pit that was a few kilometers in diameter. Wen Mayan was completely dumbfounded. How did these two become so powerful after holding up for a while? What the F***CK was going on? When Mayan's worldview was collapsing, he wondered if he was dreaming. Not only did they become stronger, but they also became so ridiculously strong. When Mayan was considered an expert in the Black Prison, even early-stage void refinement cultivators were no match for him. Mr. Li, let me have him, Cherry Blossom Gauze said to Li Daocheng with blushing cheeks. Her shyness was evident in her words. Call me Daocheng, Li Daocheng added with a slight nod. Okay. Cherry Blossom Gauze smiled and disappeared. Before Wen Mayan could react, a white dress had already landed in front of him. Wen Mayan roared and grabbed at Cherry Blossom Gauze with his demon hand. The latter lifted her leg and dodged it easily. Wen Mayan quickly got up and slashed with his sword. Clang! Cherry Blossom Gauze raised her slender hand and extended her index finger to collide with the demon's sword. Wen Mayan sucked in a breath of cold air. The enchanted sword that he was so proud of was blocked by the other party with just a finger. Cherry Blossom Gauze looked at the sky and took a deep breath. She opened her arms and enjoyed the breeze. Under Wen Mayan's violent rampage, the clouds in the sky and the thick snow below had been cleared away. There were no clouds in the sky. The long-awaited warm sunlight shone on the ground. Cherry Blossom Gauze, who had regained her full strength, felt as if a lifetime had passed. At this moment, she felt that she had finally returned. Wen Mayan was directly ignored. The huge demon body stood in front of Cherry Blossom Gauze, but at this moment he looked so small. A chill rose from the bottom of Wen Mayan's feet to his head. The female cultivator in front of him was completely different from before. After Cherry Blossom Gauze finished her action of embracing the world, she slowly turned her face and looked at Wen Mayan. Coldness flashed in her eyes. Tell me, why did you capture me? If you tell me clearly, I might not kill you. M. Chapter 580. Luo Yingsha's beautiful eyes coldly looked at Wen Mayan. She looked down at him with an unquestionable dignity. The all-powerful Wu Ho from 10,000 years ago was back. You won't kill me? Ha 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 you? I didn't want to kill you at first, but since the situation has changed, I have to change my plan. Die. Wen Mayan was furious. The demonic aura around him surged, and he slashed the enchanted sword at Cherry Blossom Gauze violently. Zung! Cherry Blossom Gauze was cut in half by the sword. Wen Mayan's face revealed a sinister smile. However, his expression froze before he could laugh. The woman who was cut in half in front of him gradually dissipated. It was just an illusion. Poof! Before Wen Mayan could react, a bloody hand came out of his chest and grabbed his demon core. Cherry Blossom Gauze was behind Wen Mayan. Her slender hand went through Wen Mayan's back and came out of his chest. If you don't want to talk, I'll have to search your soul. A faint and melodious female voice came from behind Wen Mayan. There was a hint of laziness in her tone. Wen Mayan's eyes widened on his ferocious face like a pair of gongs. Unwillingness, astonishment, and disbelief were revealed in his bulging eyes. Looking at his demon core, Wen Mayan's expression gradually dimmed. He wanted to struggle, but a gust of gloomy aura entered his body and controlled him completely. This gust of gloomy aura did not belong to the spiritual realm. Wen Mayan's eyes twitched violently. He was terrified, as if he had seen his natural enemy. You're not a human? Wen Mayan opened his mouth to reveal his fangs, and blood kept spurting out of his mouth as he stuttered with a strong sense of fear. You only feel it now? You're so slow. Cherry Blossom Gauze shook her head slightly. Spare my life, Supreme Venerable One. Wen Mayan, am obsessed with the demon core. I was blind and didn't know you were the Supreme Venerable One. Please give me a chance. I'll tell you everything I know. Wen Mayan was scared out of his wits. You've given me a chance, but it's gone now. Cherry Blossom Gauze's voice was emotionless, but it was more powerful than a roar. Wen Mayan's face was distorted. His demon body was unstable. He knew he was doomed. Wait. Just as Wen Mayan was in despair, he heard a voice. He looked up and saw the young cultivator who had fought with him 100 rounds descending slowly from the sky. Wen Mayan's ashen face was filled with despair. However, when he heard that this human cultivator actually wanted the Supreme Venerable to wait for a while, a hint of disdain appeared on his despairing face. He's the Supreme Venerable One's. Be it fiendish cultivators or ghost cultivators, they did not believe in the heavenly Tao, but the nether Tao, ghost Tao, and fiendish Tao. Cultivation was a path that defied the heavens. The demonic path not only defied the heavens, but also went against the heavens and destroyed the heavens. To the demon cultivator's gauze. After Wen Mayan sensed Falling Cherry Gauze's true aura, he naturally knew her identity. Wen Mayan felt submissive. He was like a believer. He worshipped the person he worshipped unconditionally. He wouldn't even frown if he was asked to die. So when Cherry Blossom Gauze wanted to kill Wen Mayan, he had already accepted the fact. Li Daocheng stopped him. Wen Mayan was not only ungrateful, but also disdainful. The Supreme Venerable One was supreme. How could she be controlled by a mere human cultivator? Are you worthy? Good hat. Wen Mayan's face twitched violently. When the supreme, inviolable, emotionless, and pleasant voice in his heart gently uttered the word good, he felt that his heart was filled with regret. Wen Mayan was dumbfounded. The small hand that pierced through Wen Mayan's body was pulled out slowly. The black blood evaporated instantly. Cherry Blossom Gauze disappeared when she saw Li Daocheng. She revealed a rare, shy expression and obediently walked to Li Daocheng's side. Tell me, why are you chasing after us? Li Daocheng asked lightly. Supreme Venerable One, I'm Wen Mayan, the Hall Master of the Demon Sect's Disciplinary Hall. I came to Blizzard Planet on the orders of the Demon Lord to capture the person with the Demon Orb. The Demon Lord used his supernatural power to predict that the Demon Orb would descend on Blizzard Planet today. Supreme Venerable One was detected by the Demon Orb Spirit card. I didn't know Supreme Venerable One was coming, so I chased after you. If I knew Supreme Venerable One was coming, I wouldn't dare to offend you. Wen Mayan said respectfully. Daocheng, do we keep him? Cherry Blossom Gauze licked her lips and asked softly. Keep him. I'm not familiar with the Black Prison. It's better to have a guide than to search blindly in the dark. He has a good reputation in the Black Prison. With his guidance, we can enter the core of the Black Prison. My main purpose of this trip is to sell the Demon Orb. Ordinary cultivators can't afford it. Li Daocheng transmitted his voice. Okay, I'll listen to you. Cherry Blossom Gauze smiled. Are you willing to be our guide? Li Daocheng turned to Wen Mayan and asked. It's my honor to lead the way for Supreme Venerable One. Wen Mayan lowered his head and said respectfully. Okay. Li Daocheng responded. He reached out his hand and touched Wen Mayan's chest. The blood that was gushing out stopped immediately. A warm spiritual energy entered Wen Mayan's body and the wound healed quickly. Although demon cultivators cultivated demon arts, their physical bodies were still products of the spiritual realm. The aura that they released was not like the demon chi of the underworld demons. It was actually polluted spiritual energy. Therefore, Li Daocheng's spiritual energy could help heal Wen Mayan's wounds. Li Daocheng's simple move shocked Wen Mayan. What kind of technique was this? How could it heal flesh and bones in an instant? The way Wen Mayan looked at Li Daochong immediately changed. The respect he had for Li Daochong was mostly due to Luo Yingsha. To Wen Mayan, Li Daochong was just a defeated opponent. After Li Daochong healed Wen Mayan's wounds, he turned and flew into the huge pit behind him. He entered the triangular hall that was split open and carried Yinping out. Tears hung from the corners of Yinping's eyes. She was unconscious. Li Daochong had already probed her. This girl was just overly exhausted and had lost consciousness due to shock. She would wake up on her own in a day or two. With a Mayan as a guide, the rest of the journey would be much easier. Moreover, Wen Mayan was the leader of the demon sect. Before they arrived at the Black Prison, it would be smooth sailing. However, not long after Li Daochong and the other three left the battle area, a dark dragon with a strong breath landed in the huge pit. It sniffed around the triangular hall. Then, it picked up the triangular hall and flew into the void, disappearing into the dark clouds that were gradually approaching. The dark dragon was a high-level demon pet raised by the Earl's house. There was one on almost every planet in the Black Prison. It was used for surveillance. It was impossible for the dark dragon to pay attention to everything that was happening on the planet at all times. However, once there was a large energy fluctuation, this high-level demon pet would immediately sense it. In the depths of the Earl's house in the Black Prison city of the Black Prison, the Black Dragon Great Earl Wu Chanda looked at the devastated ruins on the Blizzard planet through the spirit vision screen. The continuous mountain range was razed to the ground. The hundreds of kilometers long mark was bottomless. Half of the planet's topography was changed. Large amounts of snow evaporated and turned into torrents that merged into the tunnels. A large piece of the clouds that were dozens of kilometers thick was blown away. Such shocking destructive power could only be achieved by void refinement cultivators. Although soul formation cultivators already had the ability to destroy a planet, it was definitely not easy. There were 3 black-robed people standing beside Wu Chanda. They were the core members of the Earl's house. The 3 black-robed people, 2 men and 1 woman, all looked very young. However, they had 2 pairs of very small horns on their heads. One of the 2 men was tall and the other was fat. They looked to be in their 40s or 50s. However, half of their faces had tattoos that seemed to be totems. Both of them were early-stage void refinement cultivators. They were the 2 famous protectors of the Earl's house, the Heavenly Fiend and Earthly Chief. The tall man was the Heavenly Fiend protector, Black Dragon Earl Chi-Han. He could transform into a black flood dragon and spit out destructive black flames. The fat man was the Earthly Chief protector, Black Dragon Earl Xia Shanhu. He could transform into a 30-meter-long white tiger. The woman's cultivation was actually 1 realm higher than the 2 men. She was middle-stage void refinement. She was the other Black Dragon Great Earl of the Earl's house. She was also the 2nd most powerful cultivator of the Earl's house, second only to Wu Chanda. No one knew her name. The outside world only called her Long Ernyang. The 4 most powerful people of the Earl's house gathered together. Such a scene did not happen often. Over the years, the Earl's house had consumed a lot of resources to fight against the rise of the demon sect and the Thousandine sect. Although the backbone was still there, their sphere of influence was constantly shrinking. After the demon master of the demon sect broke through to the late-stage void refinement several decades ago, the Earl's house's days became torturous. Wu Chanda's position as the most powerful cultivator in the Black Prison was greatly shaken. The demon sect's cultivation method was extremely strange. It could rapidly increase the cultivator's strength. Therefore, the Earl's house was at an absolute disadvantage in the cultivation of late-stage talents. If the demon master of the demon sect was the only powerful one, then it would be fine. However, the strength of the hall masters under him was also not to be underestimated. The demon sect had 4 great halls: the Flame Hall, the Gust Hall, and the Heavenly Hall. The 3 hall masters were all early-stage void refinement cultivators. Their strength was not weaker than the 2 protectors of the Earl's house. In addition, the demon sect had a discipline hall. The Hall Master, when Mayan, was the only Hall Master who had not reached the Void Refinement Realm. However, when Mayan's combat strength was not inferior to the 3 Hall Masters. In fact, he was even stronger. The main reason why the Earl's house was still able to hold on was that the demon sect did not have a second-in-command like Long or Yon. The demon sect alone was enough of a headache. The Thousand sect was not idle either. The sect master of the Thousand sect was just a destitute female cultivator who had wandered around the Black Prison. Her situation was miserable, and she was even sold as a female slave. The Thousand sect had only been established for 200 years. However, its development was extremely fast. 200 years ago, this female cultivator had encountered a fortuitous encounter, and her cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. In just 10 years, she had become a mid-stage void refinement cultivator. On the day she came out of seclusion, she slaughtered all the people who had tortured her, leaving no one alive. After that, she went around rescuing female cultivators with strength. In less than 3 years, she had gathered several hundred female cultivators who were Yuaniing and above. Until now, the members of the Thousand sect were all female cultivators. They treated male cultivators as slaves and trampled on them wantonly. Female cultivators who had encountered miserable situations in the Black Prison would seek refuge with the Thousand sect as long as they were strong enough. They would use even more ruthless means to deal with their enemies. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. These words were most apt to describe the Thousand Gate. Chapter 581. Qian Yueling, the sect leader of the Thousand sect, was staring at a huge screen with Wu Chanda. She had also seen the last sword strike during the fierce battle on the Blizzard planet. She was sure that Wen Mayan was the one who did it, but there was very little other information. Who was Wen Mayan fighting with? What was the result? Why did Wen Mayan appear on the Blizzard planet? There were no definite answers to these questions. Qian Yueling watched for a long time and finally looked away. She sighed softly and glanced at the 3 female cultivators standing behind her. Finally, her eyes fell on the youngest female cultivator. Jiao Jiao, I want to hear your opinion. What do you think Wen Mayan is doing on the Blizzard planet? Jiao Jiao bowed slightly and said, Sect leader, Jiao Jiao can't determine the purpose of Wen Mayan's trip. The demon sect has been very low-key recently. They even stopped fighting with the Earl's house for the mine on the ancient moon planet. It seems that they are plotting something big. Oh, what could it be? I'm really curious. Qian Yueling asked with interest. Sect leader, according to the information sent back by various spies, the demon sect is most likely looking for some kind of medicine to cultivate a great demonic technique. The Devil Master has not appeared since he went into seclusion 5 years ago. He must be trying to break through to the late stage of the Void Refinement Realm and surpass Wu Chanda in one fell swoop. He must be suppressing the Earl House in terms of strength. The demon sect is very ambitious. Their target is not just the Black Prison region. This place is just a springboard for the demon sect. Jiao Jiao analyzed. Break through to the late stage of the Void Refinement Realm. Qi Kuang's ambition is not small. How can it be so easy to break through? What kind of medicine can help him break through? Qian Yueling fell into deep thought. Sect leader, even if Devil Master Qi Kuang breaks through to the late stage of the Void Refinement Realm, he may not be a match for sect leader's Thousand Luo art. Her name was Zhu Yinbi, and she was one of the 4 princesses of the Thousand Gate, the Princess of Jadefall. She was at the peak of the divine transformation realm. Jiao Jiao was also one of the 4 princesses of the Thousand sect. Her name was the Spiritual Sense Princess, and her cultivation level was at the early stage of the Void Refinement Realm. However, she wasn't a combat cultivator. Instead, she was a spiritual sense cultivator. The strength of her spiritual sense was comparable to that of a cultivator at the late stage of the Void Refinement Realm. Millions of thoughts could be generated in his sea of consciousness in an instant, which was comparable to a 10 million level spiritual brain. Spirit brains were dead, while cultivators were alive. When a cultivator's computing power reached the level of 10 million spirit brains, it was quite terrifying. The only void refinement realm spirit sense cultivator in the Black Prison was the Thousand Sex Princess, Jiao Jiao. The Thousand Gate's strength was the weakest among the three giants of Black Prison. However, in the past 200 years, the Thousand Gate had won more than they lost against the other two giants. It was common for the weak to win against the strong to turn the tables. And the instigator of all this was the Divine Sense Princess, Jiao Jiao's godly calculations. The outside world had always thought that the Thousand Gate's current strength was not because of Qian Yueling, but because of the Divine Sense Princess. In fact, the Divine Sense Princess was ranked first on the assassination list of the Earl's house and the demon sect, and not the Gate Master Qian Yueling. Ever since Jiao Jiao followed Qian Yueling, the latter never left her side. She even brought her with her when she was cultivating. Qian Yueling naturally wanted to protect the Divine Sense Princess. She was the key to whether the Thousand Gate could resist the Earl's house and the demon sect. The other female cultivator standing beside Jiao Jiao and Zhu Yinbi was called Princess Blazing Phoenix. She was one of the founding members of the Thousand Gate, who had followed Qian Yueling for a long time. She was at the peak of the divine transformation realm. 3 of the 4 princesses of the Thousand Gate were gathered. The last one was Princess Tianluo. She had an important mission and was currently monitoring the movements of the Earl's house and the demon sect on the distant ancient moon planet. The 3 giants of the Black Prison, the Thousand Gate, and the Earl's house had all noticed the intense battle on the Blizzard planet. However, the demon sect didn't do much. It wasn't that the demon sect didn't care. It was just that Devil Master Qi Kuang already knew what was going on the Blizzard planet. When Mayan's last message was, "I have already locked onto the bearer of the demon orb. I will capture him and bring him back to the sect in a few days." Qi Kuang trusted Wen Mayan the most. Wen Mayan was very meticulous and had a calm temperament. At the same time, he had a devil body. His strength could be ranked in the top 3 in the demon sect. Before Qi Kuang broke through to the late stage of the void refinement realm, he was already wary of Wen Mayan. Qi Kuang sat on a strange rock in the center of the demon sect's forbidden area, the demon's ceiling cave. Thick black gas swirled above his head. Just now, Qi Kuang received another message from Wen Mayan. The bearer of the demon orb had been captured. He could bring him back to the demon sect in 3 days. Qi Kuang was overjoyed. With the demon orb, he had a great guarantee to break through. It wouldn't take long for him to break through to the peak of the void refinement realm. By then, the Thousand Gate and the Earl's house would become stepping stones for him to climb to the top of the Black Prison. However, just as Qi Kuang's heart was surging with excitement, the void split open less than 10 meters away from him. A man in black walked out from it. A dark red python coiled around the man in black. His entire body was burning with faint black flames. The demon's ceiling cave, which was already very gloomy, seemed to have lost its vitality after the man in black appeared. It fell into an endless silence. Qi Kuang's pupil shrank. The excitement on his face disappeared. He immediately got up and knelt down in front of the man in black. Qi Kuang greets the Supreme Lord. Get up. How's the progress on the matter His Highness asked you to do? Supreme Lord, I've already sent people to capture him. Just now, Hall Master would send a voice transmission. The bearer of the demon orb has been captured. He can be brought to the Black Prison in 2 or 3 days. Qi Kuang hurriedly replied. Oh, so fast. Ha ha, good, very good. Then I'll inform His Highness as soon as possible. Qi Kuang, you've done well this time. Once His Highness obtains the demon orb, he won't mistreat you. In the future, you'll be His Highness spokesperson in the spirit realm. Sooner or later, all living beings in the spirit realm will submit to the Hades. You'll be the master of the entire spirit realm. The man in black laughed. Supreme Lord, what magical effect does this demon orb have? Why would His Highness want it? Qi Kuang tried his best to hide his curiosity. He tried his best to speak in a normal tone. The smile on the black-robed man's face froze. Qi Kuang, Do you know why your predecessors were all killed by His Highness the Prince despite being stronger than you? And you were put in an important position? Qi Kuang lowered his head and did not dare to face the man in black. The devil qi emitted by the latter suffocated this devil lord who was at the late stage of voiding realm. I don't know. Please enlighten me, Lord Fiendish Python, Qi Kuang said carefully. The Nether clan is a super clan in the Jiuyu country. His Highness has a great chance of inheriting the throne of the next monarch of the Jiuyu country. You only need to know that following His Highness is the right thing to do. As for other things, he will naturally tell you what you need to know. As for those that he doesn't tell you, you don't need to know. If you want to break through to the late stage of the voiding realm, you only need to think about this matter. Do you understand? Do you understand? The man in black said in a deep voice. As he spoke, the dark red python wrapped around him suddenly raised its head and flicked its tongue at Qi Kuang. I know I'm wrong. Please don't be angry, Lord Fiendish Python. Qi Kuang felt his mouth dry and hurriedly said, Since it's your first offense, I'll pretend I didn't hear it. If it happens again, don't blame me for being rude. Anything in the Hades has nothing to do with you. You just need to be a good dog. His Highness will feed you the bones. I can't stay here for long. I'll leave now and come back to take the demon or back to the Hades in 3 days. The fiendish python glanced at Qi Kuang coldly and said. After that, the fiendish python turned around and inserted his hands into the space. With a gentle pull, the space was easily torn open. The fiendish python stepped into the space, and the torn space closed instantly. Qi Kuang was soaked in sweat. He didn't breathe a sigh of relief until the demon aura on the fiendish python completely disappeared. Damn it, don't be arrogant. When I get the demon orb refined by His Highness and break through to the combination realm, I'll see if you still dare to act like a tyrant in front of me. Qi Kuang's eyes showed a trace of hatred. Li Daochong and the other 2 people took one Mayan's magic shuttle and left the Blizzard Star on the same day, heading for the Black Prison. Originally, it would take 3 days for the magic shuttle to reach the Black Prison. However, with the help of the Cherry Blossom Gauze Hades formation, the speed was more than twice as fast. They entered the Black Prison in 1 day. When Mayan's magic shuttle was too conspicuous, he had already told others about the demon orb. To put it bluntly, he was a traitor. He couldn't take the Cherry Blossom Gauze to see the Devil Lord. Therefore, the magic shuttle couldn't land on the Black Prison openly. When Mayan was respectful to the Cherry Blossom Gauze along the way, sometimes he would carefully ask about the Hades and indirectly ask which of the 4 Hades Cherry Blossom Gauze belonged to. When Mayan was one of the few senior members of the demon sect who knew that the Devil Lord Qi Kuang had surrendered to the Hades. The way of the demon sect was to become a ghost and become a demon. Cultivation was to go to heaven. Naturally, the demon sect could only go to the ground. When Mayan had already sold his soul to the devil, the Hades was his final destination. Since he could meet a supreme venerable, when Mayan had to cling to him, maybe he could also become another Devil Lord. Chapter 582. At first, Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't notice when Mayan's insinuations. However, after asking too many questions, she naturally became suspicious. Cherry Blossom Gauze never did things sloppily. She didn't like guessing either. When she felt that there was something wrong with When Mayan, she didn't care if it would hurt When Mayan's foundation. When Mayan immediately fainted. If Cherry Blossom Gauze hadn't stopped, When Mayan would have become an idiot even if he didn't die. Cherry Blossom Gauze instantly searched When Mayan's memories. When she pulled them out, Cherry Blossom Gauze's beautiful eyes flashed coldly. Almost at the same time, Li Daochong felt the change in Cherry Blossom Gauze's emotions due to the connection between their soul imprints. Li Daochong felt it very clearly. At this moment, Cherry Blossom Gauze's murderous aura was monstrous. Her entire body was extremely cold. What's wrong? I didn't expect to be unable to hide in the depths of the spiritual realm. 1/3 of the Black Prison is already under the control of the Netherworld clan. Cherry Blossom Gauze sighed. The Netherworld clan? Li Daochong frowned slightly. Cherry Blossom Gauze had previously mentioned this powerful Netherworld clan in the Hades. They have spies here, not just spies. The demon sect is backed by the Netherworld clan. The demon orb is just a cover. They're actually here to capture me. Cherry Blossom Gauze gritted her teeth. There's nothing to be afraid of. No matter how powerful the Netherworld clan is, the Netherworld clan can't directly enter the spiritual realm. With our current strength, the demon sect is nothing to be afraid of, Li Daochong said indifferently. However, a desire to become stronger flashed in his eyes. Li Daochong glanced at the unconscious Wen Mayan. Blue-gold lightning flashed in his eyes. 2 lightning bolts shot out from his eyes and struck Wen Mayan's demon core. Originally, Li Daochong wanted Wen Mayan to be the guide, but after Cherry Blossom Gauze searched his soul, he immediately changed his mind. Trusting a demonic cultivator was obviously a huge risk. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Li Daochong decided to kill him. The power of the Yang Thunder directly blasted Wen Mayan into dregs, leaving nothing behind. Beep killed a demonic cultivator at the peak of the divine transformation realm. Obtained soul power, converted into spiritual energy. Li Daochong's spiritual sea immediately rang out with a prompt. The spiritual energy in his body had clearly increased, but it hadn't leveled up. The soul force of a peak soul formation demonic cultivator was strong enough, but Li Daochong now needed an even greater amount of spiritual energy to level up. Even if Wen Mayan was killed, the spiritual energy obtained would not be enough for Li Daochong to level up. The demonic shuttle couldn't land openly in the black prison. Li Daochong carried the unconscious silver bottle and abandoned the demonic shuttle with Cherry Blossom Gauze. They flew toward the black prison. The black prison city was the most prosperous cultivation metropolis in the black prison region. At the same time, it was also the most dangerous metropolis. Almost every day, there were cultivators who died for various reasons. At the same time, many cultivators benefited from the plundering. Of course, in most cases, no one dared to kill people on the street for treasures. This was because it was easy for others to benefit. Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze landed in a dense forest 100 kilometers away from the Black Prison City. Li Daochong saw that Silver Bottle was still unconscious, so he used spiritual energy to wake her up. "Young master, why are we here? Where's that demonic cultivator?" Silver Bottle woke up in confusion. "I've already killed him." Li Daochong smiled. "Really?" Silver Bottle thought she was dead for sure before she fainted. Now that she woke up, she was out of danger. Her pretty face was full of surprise. "When have I ever lied to you? Now that we're in the Black Prison, it's time to get down to business. Let's sell the demonic pill first, then see if there are any heaven-mending pills." Li Daochong explained in a gentle tone. Li Daochong was always unusually patient with Silver Bottle. The three of them flew at a low altitude and headed toward the Black Prison. After flying for a short distance, Li Daochong stopped and stared in a certain direction. "Daochong, there's a very violent demonic aura 500 kilometers away. Should we go take a look?" Cherry Blossom Gauze asked. Li Daochong licked his lips. Demonic aura was food. Of course, they had to go take a look. "Let's go." Then, Li Daochong hugged Silver Bottle and sped toward the direction of the demonic aura. Cherry Blossom Gauze followed closely behind. After flying for less than 100 kilometers, a bright light shone in front of them. Someone was fighting. "Awoo!" Then a sharp wolf howl soared into the sky. Li Daochong and Luo Yingsha looked at each other in dismay. Several kilometers away, dozens of huge demonic wolves the size of tigers surrounded 7 or 8 cultivators with dense demonic chi all over their bodies. The cultivators could only fight back. When Li Daochong and the other two saw them, one of the cultivators was bitten by 2 demonic wolves and was instantly dismembered. The remaining 7 cultivators were 4 men and 3 women. 4 of them were Jindan Peak, 2 were Yuanying Early, and 1 was Yuanying Middle. The Jindan Peak cultivators didn't have much power to resist this pack of demonic wolves. They could only hold on because of the 3 Yuanian cultivators. The middle Yuanian cultivator was under the most pressure. He took on almost 2/3 of the attacks and consumed a lot of energy. It seemed that he couldn't hold on any longer. "Ha! You bunch of half-dead spirit cultivators. Why are you suffering on the Black Prison Planet? This is a paradise for devil cultivators and ghost cultivators. Spirit cultivators can only be slaves and furnaces here. If you don't want to die, then obediently surrender and I won't kill you. Male cultivators can be servants, and female cultivators can be my concubines. How about that? What do you think?" A rough cultivator wearing a wolf fur coat and riding on the back of a gray-silver demonic wolf that was bigger than the other demonic wolves let out a devilish laugh and joked. "Bah! Even if I blow myself up today, I won't let myself be captured. Sha Lao-san, if you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. Don't hide behind the demonic wolves and show off. If it weren't for these demonic wolves, you would be nothing." Xian Lu glared at the rough demonic cultivator sitting on the gray-silver demonic wolf and spat. "I'm a beast tamer. Being able to enslave demonic beasts is also a skill. Fairy Xian Lu, shouldn't you also not use magic treasures and spirit arrays? Or when you encounter demonic beasts, you could tell them not to use their claws and teeth, or not to use their innate skills. But do you think they will listen to you? Aside from being slow in cultivation, you spirit cultivators aren't very smart. TSK, TSK, TSK. No wonder everyone bullies you." Sha Laosan shook his head and said sympathetically, "Swoosh, swoosh." Just as Sha Laosan was mocking, 2 rays of light shot out from Xian Li's hands at an extremely fast speed. Sha Laosan almost couldn't react in time. He used all his strength to dodge one of the rays of light, but he couldn't dodge the second one. Chi! A 3-inch knife pierced into Sha Laosan's left shoulder, and the entire blade entered his body. Sha Laosan's eyes flashed with anger. Then he sneered and reached out to pull out the knife. Strangely, there wasn't even a trace of blood. Insignificant skill. Only you lowly spirit cultivators would use such underhanded means like hidden weapons. But it really scared me. I thought it was some powerful treasure, but it turned out to be just a Tongxian level hidden dart. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have dodged it. Your thing, I'll return it to you." Sha Laosan looked at the knife in his hand and said disdainfully. With a shake of his hand, the knife flew out of his hand like a sharp arrow. In an instant, 7 spirit cultivators gathered together. A male cultivator at the peak of Jindan had his dantian pierced, and his Jindan shattered on the spot. The male cultivator silently looked down at his dantian and then looked up at Sha Laosan. His eyes were full of unwillingness. He only had time to make these 2 movements. The light in his eyes dimmed, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. The vitality in his body disappeared in an instant, and he fell to the ground and died. "Brother." A female cultivator standing next to the male cultivator let out a miserable cry. "I'm going to kill you." The female cultivator shouted angrily, drew her sword, and flew towards Sha Laosan. "Don't be impulsive." Xian Lu stopped her, but it was too late. "Oh, woo." Just as the female cultivator leaped up, a demon wolf pounced from the side and bit her neck. Blood splattered everywhere. The female cultivator's eyes were filled with despair. Knowing that she was going to die, the sword in her hand stabbed into the demon wolf's neck. 1 person and 1 wolf fell from the sky to the ground, perishing together. In a few breaths of time, 2 of the 7 cultivators had fallen. Of the remaining 5, 2 were at the peak of Jindan. They could no longer hold on. Dozens of demon wolves pounced and bit crazily. They did not know fatigue and were not afraid of death. When their companions were killed, the demon wolves behind them would pounce even more crazily. Xian Lu, as the one with the highest cultivation level among them, was also at the point of exhaustion. After Sha Laosan was attacked, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and ordered the dozens of demon wolves to attack even more crazily. "As long as you beg me, I won't kill you. Otherwise, you will become demon wolf feed." Sha Laosan's eyes were fierce. "Awoo!" The dozens of demon wolves howled one after another. The 2 Jindan cultivators were covered in wounds. Xianli used all her strength to ensure that they would not be fatally injured. However, if the non-fatal injuries accumulated, they would also gradually weaken. Seeing that Xianli's strength was running out, the 5 of them were getting more and more bites from the demon wolves. Sister Xianlu, you should leave first. Don't worry about us. Without us, you can break out of the encirclement and bring the news of the beast tide back to Spirit Cultivator City. A female cultivator at the early stage of yuanying blocked a demon wolf pouncing at her with her sword and said anxiously. Xianlu smiled bitterly. We've been delayed for so long on the way. I'm afraid it's already too late. The demon wolf pack should be arriving at Spirit Cultivator City soon. Is Spirit Cultivator City really going to be destroyed? The female cultivator said with a sobbing tone. Xianlu stretched out her hand, and an umbrella-shaped Dharma treasure flew out. It floated above the 5 cultivators and covered them, supporting a pale yellow protective shield. The demon wolves that pounced at them were immediately repelled when they collided with the protective shield. This was Xian Li's last life-saving trump card. Even if the beast-taming sect doesn't attack Spirit Cultivator City, there are other powers who will. In the past 100 years, there hasn't been a single cultivator at the peak of yuanying in Spirit Cultivator City, let alone a soul formation cultivator. They can only rely on the old city lord and the great elder to bitterly hold on. Although the 2 elders are at the middle stage of soul formation, they are old and have been stuck at the middle stage of soul formation for more than 300 years. If they don't break through, they don't have much lifespan left. These years, Spirit Cultivator City has been bullied by the surrounding powers, but the 2 elders have always endured and did not make a move. This is to save their strength for a critical moment, because every time they make a move, it will consume their remaining lifespan. As long as the 2 elders are alive, they still have to be a deterrent. Once they fall, Spirit Cultivator City will be completely finished. Xianlu said helplessly. Chapter 583. The demon wolves were as large as tigers. A single normal demon wolf could match a peak Gene Dan cultivator, and 2 of them could match a yuanying early-stage cultivator. Only a mid-yuanying cultivator had enough power to deal with a group of them. The 4 demon cultivators led by Sha Laosan looked at Fairy Xianlu and the others as if they were dead. When the protective shield released by the umbrella-shaped magic treasure was broken through by the demon wolves, it would be their time of death. Fairy Xian Li's primordial Dao umbrella was a sky mystic high-grade spirit treasure, a pure defensive magic treasure. It could block the attacks of a late yuanying or even a peak cultivator. Even so, under the relentless attacks of dozens of demon wolves, the shield quickly loosened. The demon wolves' bones were as hard as steel, and normal weapons could not even leave a mark on them. Crack, crack. With 2 crisp cracking sounds, cracks appeared on the shield. Sister Xianlu, you must live on. Xiaoyun's face was resolute, and she smiled at Xianlu as she spoke. Fairy Xianlu sensed something and reached out to grab Xiaoyun, but she grabbed nothing but air. Fairy Xianlu used most of her energy to support the shield, and with the previous consumption, she was already very weak. Xiaoyun was only a yuanying early-stage cultivator, but the speed she exploded with was extremely shocking. She ignited her yuanying, released the life flower, and rushed towards Sha Laosan. As long as the controller was killed, the demon wolf pack would become a pile of loose sand. However, just as Xiaoyun flew out, the gray-silver demon wolf that Sha Laosan was sitting on leaped up like lightning. No! Fairy Xianlu screamed, her eyes full of tears, but could only watch as Xiaoyun and the gray-silver demon wolf collided. Sha Laosan smiled sinisterly. It's a pity that such a beautiful person was eaten up just like that. Spirit cultivators are lowly, but female cultivators are all beautiful. When our beast-taming sect takes over Spirit Cultivator City, we must capture all the female cultivators in the city and share them with our brothers. I thank Third Master on behalf of my brothers. A skinny man behind Sha Laosan cupped his hands and said, looking very much like a drug addict. Squeak, squeak. As soon as the skinny addict finished speaking, The gray-silver demon wolf let out a squeak unique to canines. Xiaoyan stared blankly at her hands. She had just pushed with her hands subconsciously, and the gray-silver gigantic demonic wolf was sent flying like a broken kite, crashing heavily onto the ground. When did I become so powerful? Xiao Yun couldn't believe that she was able to send the Gray Wolf King, who was comparable to a mid-stage Yuanying, flying with a single palm. Sha Laosan was also stunned. The three beast taming school disciples standing behind him were even more astonished. They didn't know what had happened. Fairy Xianlu and the other three spirit cultivator city cultivators were also confused. It wasn't until a voice sounded from the side that everyone realized that someone had appeared in the battle. Young Master, Big Sister Ingsha, these demonic wolves are so annoying. They actually eat people. Yin Ping said angrily as she looked at the demonic wolves in disgust. Yeah, it's so annoying. It actually eats people. Li Daochong licked his lips and looked at the demon wolf with greed in his eyes. These demon beasts all had beast cores in their bodies. Since they actually eat people, then let's kill them and stew them. Cherry blossom gauze followed. Three unfamiliar cultivators suddenly appeared without a sound. Sha Laosan narrowed his eyes slightly. The demonic wolves also stopped attacking at this time. They gathered together and let out a low growl, as if warning them. They looked at Li Daochong and the other two warily, but they didn't dare to take a step forward. Who are you people? The addict behind Sha Laosan questioned. If I said we weren't people, would you believe me? Cherry Blossom Gauze replied with a sly smile. Sha Laosan and the others were dumbfounded. Li Daochong took a step forward. In the eyes of others, it was just a casual step, but with this step, he had already arrived beside Xiao Yun. Li Daochong suddenly made a move and placed a palm on Xiao Yun's back. Puff! Xiao Yun spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a few steps. She had no idea how this young man attacked. As for why he attacked her, she didn't understand either. When Xianlu saw this, she said angrily, "Fellow Taoist, we have no enmity between us. Why did you attack my companion?" Li Daochong glanced at Xianlu and didn't reply. He took another step forward, and in a flash, he appeared in front of the Gray-Silver Wolf King. As the king of the demonic wolves, the Gray-Silver Wolf King had its own insufferable majesty. But at this moment, it was like a stray dog, looking down at the ground with its tail between its legs, not daring to look directly at this unfamiliar young man. This scene made Sha Laosan and the others dumbfounded. At this moment, Xiao Yun, who was hit by Li Daochong's palm, was shocked. After being hit, she thought that they were already in a desperate situation and now they had to face a new enemy. But when the burning Yuanying fire was extinguished, Xiao Yun realized that this young man wasn't attacking her, but saving her. With a simple palm, he extinguished the burning Yuanying fire and healed her internal injuries. What kind of mystical ability was this? A soul formation cultivator? Xiaoyan stood in place and stared blankly at Li Daochong's back. Her mind was blank. Xiaoyan, are you okay? Fairy Xian Lu sent a voice transmission. Sister Xianlu, I'm fine. I was burning Yuanying fire just now, but for some reason, the Yuanying fire was extinguished. Xiao Yun replied in confusion. Gray Silver, you coward. Go kill him. Sha Laosan used the beast-taming mystic technique several times to command the Gray-Silver Wolf King to attack, but there was no response. No matter how Sha Laosan scolded, the Gray-Silver Wolf King didn't respond. Li Daochong patted the Gray-Silver Wolf King's head and turned to Silver Bottle. Do you like wolf meat? Silver Bottle's little head was like a rattle drum. No. Li Daochong smiled slightly. It looks like there's a lot of meat. It's a waste not to eat it. Then I'll be your mount. Not only was he completely ignored, but he also wanted to steal his mount. Sha Laosan was completely furious. Sha Laosan chanted silently. The three beast taming school disciples behind him seemed to feel something, and all of them looked frightened. Third Master, you can't. Gray Silver hasn't grown up yet. If you use the mind loss curse, it will go completely crazy. The skinny man cried out, but it was too late. Sha Laosan had already finished casting the curse. His face was ferocious. This damn beast is disobedient. What's the point of having it? Let play its final role. Almost at the same time, the gray-silver wolf king, which was trembling in fear in front of Li Daochong, had a dark red glow in its eyes. It let out a terrifying roar and jumped toward Li Daochong. Bang! Just as Sha Laosan looked at Li Daochong as if he was looking at a dead man, the latter threw a punch. Crack! The gray-silver wolf king's skull was shattered. Before it went crazy, its body went limp and fell to the ground, motionless. I'm sorry, Yinping, your mount is gone, Li Daochong said regretfully. He killed the gray-silver wolf king with one punch. Sha Laosan's eyes widened and transparent liquid flowed out of his nose. Retreat. Sha Laosan reacted quickly. He spat out a word and turned around to run. The 4 beast-taming school disciples turned around and jumped up. 4 wolf vultures swooped down from the sky. They landed on the backs of the wolf vultures and flew away as if they were fleeing. Swoosh! A beam of Tsang Ink's light whizzed out with a round of blade light. The 4 wolf vultures in the air, along with Sha Laosan's group, were killed in one strike. Blood rained down. The dozens of demonic wolves immediately scattered like birds and beasts. They turned around and fled into the dense forest. A white shadow rose up with the wind, twisting and turning. Dozens of demonic wolves were killed in an instant, and not a single one managed to escape. Cherry Blossom Gauze clapped her hands. Mosquito meat was still meat. These demon wolves were only at the peak of Jindan. Even if there were thousands of them, they would not be enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. It was better than nothing. Cherry Blossom Gauze devoured all of the beast cores. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. I've offended you with my words just now. Please forgive me. Fairy Xianlu knew that she had met an expert. She quickly went forward and bowed to Li Daochong. Fairy, you don't have to be so polite. I heard your conversation just now. What do you mean by spirit cultivator? Li Daochong asked. Fairy Xianlu was stunned. She replied, Fellow Taoist, have you just arrived at the Black Prison? Li Daochong nodded. That's right. I just arrived. Fairy Xianlu revealed a surprised expression. She then explained, spirit cultivators are actually the natives of the Black Prison. They are orthodox cultivators who survive the catastrophe. The Black Prison has become a paradise for fiendish cultivators and ghost cultivators since hundreds of years ago. The spirit chi in the Black Prison is no longer pure. Even the power of laws is very weak. In addition, the cultivation speed of orthodox cultivators is relatively slow. Therefore, they have been oppressed by fiendish cultivators and ghost cultivators for hundreds of years. There are very few spirit cultivators now. Li Daochong was deep in thought. He then asked, since it's difficult to survive, why don't you leave here and move to the spirit realm outside the Black Prison? Fairy Xianlu pursed her lips. Because this is our home. Who would abandon their home? Li Daochong was silent for a while. Then, he said, yes, who would abandon their home? Fairy Xianlu bowed again. Xianlu will never forget fellow Taoist's kindness in saving my life today. Because I still have important matters to attend to, I must leave first. After today, if Xianlu does not die, I will be at your disposal. Li Daochong did not stop her. He nodded slightly. Xianlu then led Xiao Yun and the other 3 and flew towards the north. Li Daochong saw that they were going in the wrong direction. He said loudly, Fairy, there is fiendish chi in this direction. Are you going to die? Xianlu did not stop flying. She sent a voice transmission back. Fellow Taoist, that is Spirit Cultivator City. Xianlu grew up in this place. What is there to be afraid of if I die to protect my home? Li Daochong watched Xianlu and the other 4 disappear into the horizon. His lips curled up slightly. What is there to be afraid of if you die to protect your home? What a temperamental woman. It would be a pity to let you die. Silver Bottle. Ingsha, let's go take a look at Spirit Cultivator City first. Li Daochong picked up Silver Bottle and Cherry Blossom Gauze. The 2 of them disappeared in the blink of an eye. Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze's flying speed could no longer be seen clearly with the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, they had already left Fairy Xianlu, who was 1 step ahead of them, behind them. Not long after, the three of them arrived near the area where the fiendish chi field was surging out. Indeed, there was a medium-sized cultivation city standing on the plains. More than 10 kilometers north of the small city, a large pack of giant fiendish wolves was attacking wildly. Because the fiendish chi covered the sky and covered the sun, Li Daocheng could not sense that there was a small city 500 kilometers away. The small city was surrounded by city walls on all sides. Below the city walls was a moat that was 30 meters wide. A cultivation city of this scale was not even comparable to the cultivation cities on the Blue Bay Star. It covered an area of tens of square kilometers, and its population did not exceed 1 million. The cultivation buildings in the city were relatively backward, but the defense facilities looked very advanced. The cultivators here seemed to have spent all their efforts on defense. The city walls were 50 meters tall and more than 10 meters thick. They were all made of silver. Although silver was only a basic magical gold, if a small amount of catalytic magical gold was added, it could easily increase the hardness by 2 to 3 times, reaching the level of star soul crystals. Its practical price was also cheap. Looking at these city walls, it could withstand most attacks below the soul formation stage. In Li Daocheng's opinion, this was not a spirit cultivator city. It was clearly a turtle shell city. Baidu search dong 81 Chinese network meter. No advertising message. Chapter 584. Li Daocheng and the other two stood at the edge of a dense forest on the west side of Spirit Cultivation City. Li Daocheng's spiritual will swept across the pack of demonic wolves that were charging towards them. There were actually 100,000 of them. Other than the demonic wolves, there were also hundreds of gigantic demonic apes and thousands of wolf vultures in the air. A beast tide of such a scale was enough to bring about a devastating blow to Spirit Cultivation City. At this moment, tens of thousands of cultivators were gathered at the west gate of Spirit Cultivation City. However, most of these cultivators' cultivations were not high, only at the gene dance stage. There were about 1,000 yuanying cultivators, and less than 100 of them were at the late stage of yuanying. Every cultivator had a grim expression as they looked at the dust in the west and the slightly trembling ground. The city lord of Spirit Cultivation City, Boyazi, had a desolate expression on his old face that was filled with estrangement. For the sake of Spirit Cultivation City, Boyazi had given up everything. However, the people in Spirit Cultivation City seemed to have been cursed. After 1,000 years, no one was able to break through to the void refinement stage. As time passed, fewer and fewer spirit cultivators were able to enter the soul formation stage. Back then, as the main battlefield between Hades and human cultivators, this place was truly cursed by Hades. It was no longer suitable for spirit cultivators to cultivate, and fewer people awakened their spirit veins. At the end of the calamity, there were still hundreds of millions of spirit cultivators on the Black Prison. There were more than 100 soul formation cultivators, and more than 10 of them were at the peak of the soul formation stage. At that time, Spirit Cultivation City was the #1 power in the Black Prison. However, as time passed, the soul formation cultivators exhausted their lifespans one after another. At the end of the calamity, there were still many nether ghosts left on the Black Prison. In order to eliminate these remnants, Spirit Cultivation City sent out all of its members, and in the next 100 years, they cleared out most of the nether ghosts on the Black Prison. However, it also caused a great loss of strength, so much so that it was quickly surpassed by the devil cultivators who fled here. However, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. Spirit Cultivation City was still strong, and time had become Spirit Cultivation City's greatest enemy. Due to the decrease in the number of cultivators who had awakened their spirit veins, the number of cultivators had plummeted. Ordinary people had shorter lifespans and did not have much ability to protect themselves. Even surviving in a harsh environment was a problem. The number of humans in Spirit Cultivator City continued to decrease. Without a large base, the number of cultivators naturally decreased. After 1,000 years, The original population of 100 million was reduced to just over a million. Just like that, Spirit Cultivation City gradually became a weak force in the Black Prison, bullied by everyone. The Spirit Cultivators could only hole up in Spirit Cultivator City and struggle at death's door, not daring to take half a step out of the city. Under the protection of the last two guardians, City Lord Boyazi and Great Elder True Lord Roaming Dragon, Spirit Cultivation City was in imminent danger. As a matter of fact, even those at the middle stage of the semi-god realm were not the most powerful warriors in the Black Prison. However, the Black Prison and the other major powers were not interested in Spirit Cultivator City. Otherwise, Spirit Cultivator City would have long ceased to exist. Although those weaker powers were eyeing the Spirit Cultivator City covetously, their strength was not enough to crush the Spirit Cultivator City that had two middle-stage Divine Transformation Cultivators. If they fought head-on, they might be able to destroy Spirit Cultivator City, but they would also pay a heavy price. The reason why these powers coveted Spirit Cultivator City was because every Spirit Cultivator was an excellent cultivation furnace. In the Black Prison, there were very few orthodox Spirit Cultivators. Most of the cultivators were Devil Cultivators and Ghost Cultivators. Whether it was Devil Arts or Ghost Arts, they all required the souls of Spirit Cultivators to guide them. Other than that, it was said that there were a few magic treasures and a large number of Spirit Stones from the ancient times left behind in Spirit Cultivator City. Under the three heads of Black Prison, there were a few stronger sects that used Spirit Cultivator City as a springboard for their future development. The Beast Taming Sect was one of the strongest sects and had been harassing Spirit Cultivator City for the past few years. The two sides had engaged in several large-scale battles and countless small battles. More than 10,000 Spirit Cultivators had died at the hands of the Beast Taming Sect. For this reason, the Beast Taming Sect had paid the price of more than 1,000 disciples and thousands of demon wolves. However, in comparison, the losses of the Beast Taming Sect were negligible. Controlling the magical beasts gave them a huge advantage. The demon wolves reproduced quickly, and no matter how many ordinary demon wolves died, they would not feel any heartache. This was also the reason why the Beast Taming Sect dared to engage in a large-scale battle with Spirit Cultivator City. The other powers did not have so much cannon fodder to use. The Beast Taming Sect consumed Spirit Cultivator City while cultivating demon wolves on a large scale. Today's Beast Tide, the Beast Taming Sect had been planning for a long time. In order to break through Spirit Cultivator City's sturdy turtle shell, the Beast Taming Sect had taken out all of their hundreds of years of accumulation. It seemed like a risky action, but in reality, it was a business that could make a lot of money. There were also Spirit Cultivators who were afraid of death, and a few Spirit Cultivators were bought by the Beast Taming Sect. Therefore, the Beast Taming Sect knew the situation in Spirit Cultivator City like the back of their hand. They knew that Spirit Cultivator City was already at dusk, and only the last bit of afterglow was left. The only thing that the Beast Taming Sect was truly afraid of was the two remaining mid-stage, semi-god realm cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City. As for the other Spirit Cultivators, the Beast Taming Sect did not put them in their eyes at all. Of the three leaders of the Beast Taming Sect, the weakest was Yuanying Laosan, who was at the late stage of semi-god realm, Sha Lauer, who was at the early stage of semi-god realm. The leader, Samucha, was a late-stage, semi-god realm beast-taming devil cultivator. In the entire Black Prison region, he was considered an expert. The battle strength of a beast-taming master was not strong, but a spirit cultivator was still a devil cultivator. However, a beast-taming master could control spirit beasts or magical beasts that were even stronger than themselves. The strength of a beast-taming master was reflected in their spirit pets and magical pets. The reason why Samucha was so powerful was because he had a king-level magical pet, the ancient devil ape Iron Cliff, who was comparable to a peak semi-god realm cultivator. At this moment, Samucha was sitting on the shoulder of Iron Cliff, who was as tall as a 4-story building. He was holding an ugly lizard in his hand as he sinisterly looked at Spirit Cultivator City that was more than 10 kilometers away. Lauer followed closely beside him, standing on the head of a giant wolf demon. The difference between a demonic wolf and a demonic wolf was that the former walked upright, while the latter walked on all fours. Demonic wolves were extremely rare and belonged to the general level. Demonic wolf kings were not a match for early-stage semi-god realm cultivators. The two heavyweights of the beast-taming sect followed behind the beast-tide unhurriedly. More than 5,000 disciples each rode on their own magical pets and followed closely behind. After the tsunami-like beast-tide was completely exposed, there was no need to hide anymore. Under Samucha's order, more than 100,000 magical beasts surged towards Spirit Cultivator City like a tide. On the city wall of Spirit Cultivator City's west gate, City Lord Boyazi and Great Elder True Lord Wandering Dragon had heavy expressions. More than 10 peak Yuaniing cultivators stood behind the two elders, each of them with a determined expression on their faces. City Lord, please allow us to leave the city to fight. We are willing to live and die with Spirit Cultivator City. Spirit Cultivator City's defense commander, Xiao Yin, requested. The more than 10 spirit cultivators standing behind Xiao Yin all echoed, "We are willing to live and die with Spirit Cultivator City." Boyazi sighed. "You are Spirit Cultivator City's last hope. Without my orders, no one is allowed to leave Spirit Cultivator City without my permission. Otherwise, you will be punished for betraying the city." Xiao Yin, as the commander, how can you charge in a battle? If you go, who will command? It's one thing for Xiao Yin to mess around, but are you elders also messing around with him? Xian Lu has already sent news that she has found the missing heavenly thunderstone in the primordial thunder formation. In more than 10 minutes, Xian Lu will arrive. If the primordial thunder formation can be activated, not to mention 100,000 beast tide, even void refinement realm devil cultivators will not be able to break through Spirit Cultivator City. But City Lord, there is still more than 10 minutes before Xian Lu arrives. The beast tide has already reached the city. If we don't fight, Spirit Cultivator City will be breached in a few minutes. Xiao Yin said anxiously, "Commander Xiao, you can leave. You don't need to fight. Let me and Brother Bo do it in these 10 minutes. Great Elder, True Lord Wandering Dragon said. "What? Great Elder, you and the City Lord are going to fight?" "No, you are Spirit Cultivator City's greatest reliance. If anything happens to the two of you, Spirit Cultivator City will really be finished," Xiao Yin said in shock. "There's no need to say anymore. Wandering Dragon and I haven't fought for 30 years, and our hands have been itching for a long time. Today we're going to get rid of the itch. All of you leave. As long as one of you steps into the soul formation realm in the future, you can go to the Spirit Cultivator Tomb under Spirit Cultivator City to comprehend the Spirit Bone Codex. Spirit Cultivator City will also receive hundreds of years of protection. With the Primordial Thunder Formation, there might be a chance for Spirit Cultivator City to regain its former glory and chase those devil cultivators and ghost cultivators out of the Black Prison." Boyazi's turbid old eyes flashed with a ruthless look. After saying that, Boyazi flew into the sky and said in a deep voice, "City Defense Combat Cultivators, follow me to battle. Chop these damn demonic beasts into meat paste." With a single order, swoosh, 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 behind the West City wall, light shone in all directions. Thousands of combat Shio flew into the sky and followed Boyazi out of the city. Supreme Wandering Dragon waved his hand, and a dragon's roar came from the void. A flood dragon flew out from the clouds. It was 100 meters long, and although it wasn't a real dragon, it had some of the might of a real dragon. Boyazi took the lead and charged into the beast tide, killing hundreds of demonic wolves with one strike. Such power immediately excited the combat cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City. They all raised the weapons in their hands and shouted as they charged into the beast tide. "Brothers, kill these demonic wolves and stew them into soup." A burly combat cultivator raised a giant axe in his hand and roared. With a swing of the giant axe, 3 demonic wolves were chopped into meat paste. In a single exchange, the combat cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City, led by Boyazi instantly defeated the vanguard of the beast tide. Seeing that they had taken the initiative, the spirit cultivators watching the battle on the city wall had the illusion that the demonic wolves weren't that powerful. It seemed that their previous worries were unnecessary. The old city lord is still as powerful as before. Second Elder Yin Kuan, who was standing beside Xiao Yin, praised. Yes, the old city lord hasn't made a move for 30 years. We have already forgotten his strength. These demonic wolves are very powerful to us, but they're just a bunch of ants in front of the old city lord. Third Elder followed. When we can reach the old city lord's strength, it won't be too late for Spirit Cultivator City to regain its glory. Unfortunately, 100 years have passed, and we still can't break through the threshold of the semi-god realm. Xiao Yin said dejectedly, Commander Xiao, you're the most likely to reach the semi-god realm among us. Don't be discouraged. If you don't have confidence, what hope do we have? A middle-aged female cultivator with a gorgeous appearance said, Uncle Xiao, you can definitely enter the semi-god realm. A young girl standing beside the middle-aged lady cheered Xiao Yin on. Xiao Yin forced a smile. The semi-god realm was easier said than done. However, he really couldn't be discouraged. He reached out and patted the young girl's head. Exine, with your words, Uncle Xiao will break through to the semi-god realm, even if I have to risk my old life. Boom! A loud explosion resounded in the sky. Just as the cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City saw the old city lord's display of invincible might and were discussing with each other, several of the great ape descended from the sky and landed on the ground less than 500 meters away from the western city wall. More than 10 combat cultivators were trampled into meat paste in an instant. Roar! A loud roar came from the forest in the distance. More than 10 demonic wolves rushed out with large clubs in their hands, followed by hundreds of demonic wolves. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 combat cultivators were smashed into pieces by the large clubs. The wolf vultures in the sky attacked in groups. The hundreds of combat cultivators were surrounded and could only defend themselves. Apart from the old city lord, the thousands of combat cultivators were forced into a passive position. More than 10 flying swords flew around Boyazi's body, and all the demonic beasts that approached him were easily chopped into meat paste. However, when more than 10 silver demonic wolf kings pounced out from the beast tide, Boyazi's offensive became weaker. This was equivalent to being surrounded by more than 10 peak Yuanian cultivators. Boyazi wasn't afraid, but he had to conserve his strength because he knew that the truly powerful ones hadn't appeared yet. If he used his foundation now, he wouldn't be able to fight later. Boyazi's purpose in joining the battle was not to fight to the death, but to delay and wait for Xian Lu to return. Therefore, Boyazi didn't use his true power to kill the silver demonic wolf kings. Seeing that Boyazi's charge was about to be exhausted, True Lord Wandering Dragon finally moved. He jumped from a city wall and landed on the Flood Dragon's head. The second echelon of Spirit Cultivator City's combat cultivators, more than 3,000 warriors, rushed out at the same time. The second charge began. Chapter 585. The momentum of Boyazi and the combat cultivators from Spirit Cultivation City had just weakened when perfected Lord Wandering Dragon rode over with more than 3,000 combat cultivators. The beast tide was once again stopped. In the sky and on the ground, the beast tide and the combat cultivators fought fiercely. The main force of Spirit Cultivation City had already been mobilized. Other than the dozen or so cultivators at the peak of Yuanying, the rest were all cultivators below the mid-stage of Jindan. No matter how many spirit cultivators there were, it was useless. 5 or 6 of them might not be a match for a demonic wolf. Perfected Lord Wandering Dragon rode the Flood Dragon up and down. Wherever he passed, flesh and blood splattered. Although the demonic wolf's body was strong, it was far inferior to the Flood Dragon. In the blink of an eye, more than 10,000 demonic wolves were wiped out, and their corpses were everywhere. Samucha sneered. The 2 old things have finally made their move. Second brother, Send out all the demonic ape troops to play with the two old guys first. Sha Lauer smiled sinisterly and gave an order. More than 500 demonic apes suddenly shot out red light from their eyes and let out terrifying roars. They used the mountain-shaking steps and charged from the back of the beast-hide. These crazy demonic apes did not care, and many demonic wolves were trampled to death. Each demonic ape was 5 to 6 meters tall and had a huge body. One of their feet was half the size of a demonic wolf. In just a few breaths' time, more than 500 demonic apes had already rushed to the front of the beast-hide. More than 100 of them pounced on the flood dragon at the same time. Perfected Lord Wandering Dragon snorted and swept the purple vine whip in his hand across the air. Ha! There was an explosion. More than 10 demonic apes were sent flying. However, once the remaining demonic apes caught the flood dragon, they attached themselves to its body like leeches. The demonic apes' huge hands were like iron pincers, and their nails were like iron hooks. With one claw, they could crush silver into powder. No matter how strong the flood dragon's body was, it could not withstand the ravaging of so many demonic apes. Large pieces of the pseudo-dragon scales were torn off. The intense pain caused the flood dragon to let out a heart-wrenching roar, like thunder in the dark clouds. The combat strength of these demonic apes was comparable to a peak Yuanian cultivator. A few of them were even larger and were comparable to an early-stage soul formation cultivator. Even true monarch roaming dragon found it hard to deal with over 100 of these demonic apes. No matter how hard the flood dragon tried, it could not get rid of these demon apes. The continuous addition of wounds made it unable to fly in the void any longer. With a loud crash, he fell to the ground. Its body was 100 meters long and weighed dozens of tons. Many demonic wolves were unable to dodge in time and were crushed into meat paste. With the addition of over 500 devil apes, the situation was reversed in the blink of an eye. Boyazi and true Lord Roaming Dragon tried their best to resist, but it was to no avail. The two groups of thousands of battle cultivators fell one after another. The battle situation was even more tragic than the battle to defend the demon-subduing city. Li Daochong was currently standing among the cultivators on the western city wall of Spirit Cultivator City. No one noticed anything unusual while the cherry blossom gauze and the silver bottle stood on both sides. Li Daochong had wanted to attack long ago, but the illusory female voice in his body sounded again. Of course, Li Daochong already knew who the owner of this female voice was when he was on Blizzard Planet. It was the snow fairy Shui and I that he had met outside the cave on Planet Crimson Sunday. It was just that Li Daochong did not know when this charming fairy had sneaked into his body. He did not feel anything at all. Li Daochong was most proud of his spiritual sense. The stronger a cultivator's spiritual sense, the higher their perception, whether it was to the outside world or to themselves. The stronger the spiritual sense, the harder it was to be parasitized. However, Shui and I was hiding in Li Daochong's body, and he did not sense it at all. If Shui and I did not appear herself, Li Daochong would still be in the dark. Li Daochong, who had always thought that his spiritual sense was extremely strong, had miscalculated for the first time. Heart of Spirit, what is that? Li Daochong asked in his sea of consciousness. The heart of Spirit is the origin of a fairy's soul. Without the heart of Spirit, a fairy is incomplete and cannot even be called a living being. Even if you use spirit energy to condense a spiritual body, it will dissipate very quickly. However, with the heart of Spirit, you can completely stabilize your spiritual body and officially become a member of the Spirit King clan. Shui and I patiently explained. A few minutes ago, Shui and I suddenly asked Li Daochong to help her find the heart of Spirit. That thing was in Spirit Cultivation City. Li Daochong and Shui and I had only met once, but she had left a deep impression on him. Towards this snow fairy, Li Daochong had always kept the feeling of meeting his first love. Li Daochong had never seen such a pure life form before. However, even so, Li Daochong would not randomly search Spirit Cultivation City just because of Xueni's request. Li Daochong was not a robber, nor was he a thief. Not to mention that Spirit Cultivation City had no enmity with him. They were of the same origin as him. According to Xian Li's explanation, the so-called spirit cultivators were orthodox cultivators who did not enter the devil path and did not walk the ghost path. I can help you obtain the heart of spirit. In exchange, you have to tell me how you were able to hide in my body without me noticing at all. Li Daochong said seriously. That's easy to explain. We fairies are originally formed from highly condensed spirit energy. The only difference between us and normal spirit energy is that we have consciousness. That day, I wanted to hide underground and sleep, but when I left, a suction force from somewhere pulled me into your body. At that time, I thought I was going to be assimilated and become a part of you. However, that suction force stopped after absorbing most of my spirit energy. I was too weak to react, and my consciousness gradually blurred and I fell into a deep sleep. Until a few days ago, when I woke up, you did not notice me because the spirit energy in my body was no different from yours. It was just a strand of spirit energy with consciousness. Shui and I replied honestly. I see. Li Daochong stroked his chin and continued. Then, when you woke up in my body, did you feel uncomfortable? Li Daochong asked this very carefully. He was testing Shui and I. He wanted to know if this fairy, who had been hiding in his body for so long, had sensed the existence of the hot-blooded upgrader. In fact, Li Daochong had been wondering why Shui and I was able to hide in his body without him noticing. Li Daochong's only worry was that the hot-blooded upgrader would be exposed. If it was really exposed, Li Daochong would consider whether or not to kill Shui and I. The hot-blooded upgrader was a secret that Li Daochong absolutely could not reveal to anyone, at least not for now. Li Daochong knew that Shui and I was very pure and did not have any other thoughts. Even if she sensed this secret, it might not be a big deal. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. Fairies were pure life, forms born from the spirit world. They did not have so many tricks up their sleeves. They were the product of the natural environment reaching its peak. Fairies and nether ghosts were natural opposites. However, fairies had souls. Even if Shui and I did not say anything, it did not mean that others could not search her soul. No, not only did Shui and I not feel uncomfortable, the spirit chi that I lost earlier has also recovered. When I was sleeping in your body, a large amount of spirit chi would leak out and become a part of me every once in a while. Shui and I replied without hiding anything. Li Daochong quietly pondered over Shui Ni's words. His divine sense was locked onto Shui Ni's soul consciousness. No fluctuations could escape Li Daochong's detection. As long as Shui and I was lying, he would immediately sense it. However, when Shui and I was speaking, Li Daochong did not sense any fluctuations. She was telling the truth. At that moment, a loud roar pulled Li Daochong's thoughts from his sea of consciousness back to reality. Roar. 3 kilometers away from the city walls of Spirit Cultivation City, the pair of unformed dragon horns on the head of True Lord Wandering Dragon's mount. The great ape, which was twice the size of an ordinary devil ape, snapped them. True Lord Wandering Dragon's purple vine whip turned into a sharp spike and shot out, hitting the great ape's chest. However, it did not even pierce through its flesh. The great ape glanced at True Lord Wandering Dragon indifferently, grabbed the purple vine whip, and swung it forcefully. True Lord Wandering Dragon was flung out like a kite with a broken string, crashing into the city walls with a boom. The silver city walls collapsed like a pile of dirt. Boyazi's situation was not much better. More than 10 demonic wolves, led by a giant demonic wolf, surrounded Boyazi. This old city lord could only parry and did not have the ability to counterattack. More than half of the thousands of combat cultivators who had followed the 2 elders were either dead or injured. Those who could still stand were already at their limits. On the other hand, the beast tide was only blocked for a few minutes. 20,000 demonic wolves were killed. It seemed like a shocking number, but standing on the city wall and looking over the black mass of demonic wolves behind them did not seem to have lost a single one. The gap in the city wall that True Lord Wandering Dragon had created was dozens of meters wide. The beast tide, turned and formed an arrow, charging towards a gap. Boyazi's old face smiled bleakly. He was old after all. At this moment, he had already used his full strength, but he could not even deal with a few demonic wolves. If he were a few decades younger, these beasts would be nothing. Forget it, forget it. This old man's cheap life is useless. I'll do the next thing for Spirit Cultivation City. No matter what, this old man cannot become a sinner of Spirit Cultivation City. Boyazi let out a long sigh. With that, the primordial spirit in Boyazi's body burned rapidly, and his appearance became younger and younger at a speed visible to the naked eye. Burning his primordial spirit instantly obtained a huge amount of energy, but this state could not be maintained for long. 3 minutes was the limit. Once the time limit was up, Boyazi's oil lamp would run out and he would die. On the city wall, Xiaoyan saw this scene and turned his face away. He could not bear to look directly. Some female cultivators shed tears. Seeing that the beast tide below was about to flood into Spirit Cultivation City, Xiaoyan gritted his teeth and waved his hand. Brothers, we will not let these beasts take half a step into Spirit Cultivation City. Chapter 586. Under Xiaoyan's lead, all the cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City who could fight came out. At this moment, he could no longer care too much. What living strength? What future hope? If Spirit Cultivator City was gone, everything would be meaningless. Weren't they struggling for so many years just to protect Spirit Cultivator City? The last million or so aboriginals and spirit cultivators of the Black Prison were all here. Once the city was broken, there was no point in struggling alone. Li Daochong mixed in with the combat cultivators and flew down the city wall. Cherry Blossom Gauze also joined the battle while protecting the silver vase. Xiaoyan and the other combat cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City were already prepared to die. They rushed into the beast tide, their bodies flashing with spirit light. They did not hold back at all as they crazily killed the demon wolves. Boyazi, who had recovered his youth, increased his fighting strength explosively and killed dozens of demon apes in an instant. But against Samuchas the Great Ape, there was still not much he could do. Boyazi used his natal magic treasure, Boya Flying Sword, but only left a shallow wound on the Great Ape's body. Blood dripped from the corner of True Lord Roaming Dragon's mouth, and his eyes were bleak. The flood dragon that had followed him for more than 300 years was now covered in wounds. Thousands of demon wolves pounced on the flood dragon's body and crazily bit it. The combat cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City fell one after another, and corpses littered the ground below the city wall. The beast-taming sect's true attack had yet to be launched, but Spirit Cultivator City was already unable to withstand it. Samuch's big flat face had a greedy expression as he looked in the direction of Spirit Cultivator City. Soon, everything inside would belong to the beast-taming sect. Plunder was the most important rule of survival in the Black Prison. More than 5,000 disciples of the beast-taming sect rode on their own magic pets and suddenly sped up from behind the beast tide. Each of them waved their weapons and howled, just like bandits coming down the mountain. The battle had already tilted towards the beast-taming sect. The big tree that was Spirit Cultivator City was going to fall in the end. Many years later, there wouldn't even be a trace left on the Black Prison, and it would soon be submerged in the torrent of history. At this moment, the old city Lord Boyazi stood in front of the beast tide with the appearance of a 30-year-old. He wanted to use the last firework of his life to give the beast tide a final blow. So. 2 beams of light flashed. Boyazi was stunned. He glared at them and said anxiously, "Nonsense. What are you two doing here? Go back." The newcomers were none other than the pair of mother and daughter cultivators who had been standing on the city wall all this time. The noble and gorgeous middle-aged female cultivator looked somewhat similar to Boyazi. The middle-aged female cultivator pulled out a sword and said resolutely, "Father, what's the point of saying all this at a time like this? Let your daughter fight the enemy together with you." "That's right, Grandpa. Exiner won't go back. Exiner wants to fight," said the young girl beside the middle-aged woman. All of you. Boyazi was so angry that he couldn't speak, but he couldn't say anything now. The beast horde was coming at them from all directions. The pack of demonic wolves was like a tide, breaking apart the human defense line that the cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City had built. In a single exchange, over 10,000 cultivators were killed. Some of the demonic wolves stopped and began to gnaw on the corpses. Even more demon wolves rushed into the city. At this moment, the beast tide was no longer composed of a single demon wolf. Instead, it was composed of dozens of different demon beasts. Rock tigers, flaming demon lions, thorny mammoths, and so on. The beast-taming sex people urged these large demonic beasts to charge forward, howling and howling. Boyazi's boya flying sword slashed out, and a sword ray that was dozens of feet long swept out. Almost at the same time, the ugly lizard in Samucha's hand shot out like lightning, turning into a beam of light. With a boom, the sword ray and the light collided, canceling each other out. Boyazi smiled bitterly. If this sword wasn't blocked, it would be enough to kill tens of thousands of demonic wolves. Mother, be careful! Exana suddenly cried out. A demonic ape grabbed the middle-aged woman's shoulder. This demonic ape was larger than ordinary demonic apes and had a tuft of silver hair on its back. This was a silverback demonic ape that was comparable to Yuanying peak cultivators. It was much stronger than ordinary demonic apes. The middle-aged woman was Boyazi's eldest daughter, Fairy Piaoyan. With her late Yuanying peak cultivation, she could deal with a few ordinary demonic apes, but against a silverback demonic ape, she was immediately at a disadvantage. Seeing that her mother was in danger, Exine-Er's beautiful figure flashed, and she rushed forward without a care. She threw herself onto the back of the demonic ape and madly slashed at the back of its neck with her crescent blades. However, after a dozen slashes, she didn't even leave a mark. The silverback demonic ape didn't care. It raised its large hand and grabbed Exine-Er from its neck. The huge ape grabbed Exine-Er's small waist and looked at her in front of its eyes. The silverback demonic ape licked its lips. The young girl's fragrance greatly increased its appetite. It opened its mouth and was about to stuff Exine-Er into its mouth. No! The middle-aged woman let out a heart-wrenching cry and stabbed her sword at the demonic ape's chest. Clang! With a crisp sound, the middle-aged woman's sword didn't manage to pierce through the demonic ape's chest and directly broke. At the same time, Boyazi's boya flying sword flew over. How could he watch as his granddaughter was eaten? However, a flying lizard descended from the sky and knocked Boya's flying sword away. In the blink of an eye, a streak of yellow light shot over at high speed. Exine-Er's face was ashen. She could feel the pungent smell coming from the demonic ape's bloody mouth. At this moment, the young girl's face was filled with despair. She thought she was dead for sure. Just as the demonic ape bit down, the yellow light flew over and blocked its fang mouth. A spear was pressed against the demonic ape's mouth. Xiaoyan's face was filled with shock. He arrived just in time and managed to block the demonic ape's bite. The demonic ape didn't get to eat the young girl's delicious flesh. Biting the spear, it let out a low growl and kicked out. Xiaoyan blocked with his arms. With a bang, he was sent flying. The demonic ape spat out the spear in its mouth. It opened its mouth again and bit at Exine. The middle-aged woman felt her head buzz and almost fainted. Boyazi's body exploded, but he couldn't do anything else. The great ape had him tied down and couldn't help at all. Xiaoyan, who had been kicked away, turned his face away and clutched his chest. He couldn't bear to watch, and a single tear flowed down his resolute face. Exine-Er's beautiful eyes were wide open as she watched the demonic ape's mouth descend upon her. The mouth was filled with sinister fangs and a pitch-black throat. The young girl was in a state of incomparable fear and despair. She had already lost all ability to think. However, when the mouth was a foot away from her, it suddenly stopped. The young girl's vision blurred, but she saw a figure appear on the demonic ape's shoulder. The man grabbed the silverback demon ape's big ear with one hand and turn its head around. This scene was very strange. Boyazi's eyes focused. He wanted to see who this person was. However, when he saw the person's appearance, Boyazi had no impression of him. Boyazi knew all the spirit cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City. Moreover, there weren't many of them to begin with. At the spirit severing stage, it wasn't difficult to have a photographic memory. Boyazi was certain that he didn't know this person. The middle-aged woman's face was still filled with fear. She stared blankly at the young man who had appeared on the demonic ape's shoulder. If it weren't for him, Exon would have been swallowed into the demonic ape's stomach. Xiaoyan closed his eyes and opened them. The dignified 7-foot-tall man had tears hanging from the corners of his eyes. However, when he opened his eyes again, he was stunned. The tragic scene of Exon Er's head being bitten off didn't appear. Instead, a very strange scene greeted his eyes. A 3-story tall demonic ape was being grabbed by a young cultivator by one of its large ears. It seemed that the young cultivator wasn't using any strength. He was only gently pinching the black ear. However, the demonic ape's large head was pulled to one side. The demonic ape let out a furious roar. After a moment of deadlock, it couldn't turn the situation around no matter what. It simply opened its mouth and bit Li Daochong. Slap! Li Daochong swung his hand and slapped it. In front of the demonic ape, Li Daochong's hand was about the size of its ear. However, it was this palm that was so small that it was negligible to the demonic ape. With one slap, the demonic ape was sent flying. The moment it was hit, half of its face became very strange. Slap! This crisp sound was like a piece of fatty meat that had been forcefully slapped. Exon who was bound by the giant hand, was also sent flying. The demonic ape slid on the ground for dozens of meters before coming to a stop. In this line, hundreds of demonic wolves were sent flying by the demonic ape. When the momentum weakened, Exon clearly felt her body loosen. The giant hand holding her softened and lost its strength. Exon hurriedly broke free from the hand and quickly retreated. Exon looked at the demonic ape in shock. This glance caused the young girl's heart to fiercely jump, and she was stunned on the spot. Half of the demonic ape's head had sunk in. Its head was twisted 270 degrees, and its eyes were wide open. It was no longer breathing. Killing the demonic ape with one slap? How is this possible? Exon small nose dripped with a transparent liquid. Her pair of large eyes were wide open in shock. Not only Exon but Boyazi, the middle-aged lady, and Xiaoyan were also stunned on the spot. When did such a powerful spirit cultivator appear in Spirit Cultivator City? Li Daochong completely ignored the shocked gazes of the 4 people. He took a step forward and appeared in front of the demonic ape. He reached into the demonic ape's head and took out a beast core. This scene was seen by Samucha in the distance. A pair of small mung bean eyes shot out a sinister light. Every demonic ape was the most valuable asset of the beast-taming sect. Boss, that brat seems to be very powerful. When did Spirit Cultivator City have such a person? Sha Lauer was puzzled. The shot hits the bird that sticks out. Is he very powerful? Then let's gather all our strength and kill that brat first. Boyazi is burning his primordial spirit. At most, he has 1 or 2 minutes left. We don't need to do anything. He will die himself. True Lord Roaming Dragon is heavily injured and won't be able to cause any trouble. Samucha coldly snorted. No matter who it was, as long as they dared to block the way, they would be eliminated. All of you listen up. Whoever kills that brat will be the 4th leader of the beast-taming sect. They will be heavily rewarded with magic treasures, beauties, and spirit stones. Sha Lauer obeyed Samucha's instructions and loudly ordered. The experts of the beast-taming sect immediately became spirited. The 4th leader meant that under 3 people above 10,000 people, the distribution of cultivation resources would be greatly increased. This was the first time such a reward had been given in the beast-taming sect. The eyes of the more than 10 peak-level Yuaniing beast-taming masters immediately revealed a bloodthirsty look. In their eyes, that young spirit cultivator was already a dead man. In the eyes of demonic cultivators, spirit cultivators were trash and crippled. Not only were their cultivation speed slow, but their physical bodies were also extremely weak. Even if they reached the spirit-severing stage, their fighting strength was not much. Although the young spirit cultivator had used some unknown method to kill the demonic ape, it did not change the fact that spirit cultivators were weak. In short, in the Black Prison, spirit cultivators were synonymous with weaklings. Chapter 587. In the eyes of Boyazi and the others, killing the silver-backed demon ape with a single palm was simply shocking. Because even the two big shots of Spirit Cultivation City, Boyazi and true Lord Roaming Dragon, were unable to do so. But to Li Daochong, he didn't feel anything. The silver-backed demon ape was not even worth mentioning in his eyes. It only had the strength of a mid-level witch ghost. Li Daochong glanced at the beast core in his hand, but did not crush it. Instead, he kept it in his storage ring. At this moment, more than 10 giant figures of different shapes rushed over. Li Daochong's eyes flashed, and Tsang ink instantly appeared in his hand. Fellow Taoist, be careful, you can't fight them head-on. These demonic beasts have strong bodies. Even the attacks of early soul formation cultivators may not be able to hurt them. Boyazi reminded. Li Daochong glanced at Boyazi, then retracted his gaze and disappeared. Whoosh! A Tsanging flashed by. More than 10 Yuanying peak beast tamers of the beast-taming sect, and their mounts were all cut down in an instant. Astonishing skill. Boyazi stood there dumbstruck, and was almost sent flying by the demonic ape's palm. The shock on Exener's face became even more intense, and she said in a daze, "Mother, am I dreaming? Is there such a powerful spirit cultivator in this world?" The middle-aged lady was at a loss, unable to answer the girl's question. Xiaoyan felt that everything had become unreal. Could spirit cultivators be so domineering? Not only Boyazi's group of 4, but the surrounding combat cultivators of Spirit Cultivation City were all shocked by this scene. More than 10 experts of the beast-taming sect were killed with a single slash. A rain of blood fell from the sky, and the arms and legs of more than 10 demonic beasts near the king level scattered in all directions. When they fell from the sky, they exploded one after another. Bang, bang, bang. A green shadow flashed past, and more than 10 beast cores were all collected in Li Daochong's hands. At the same time, a white shadow flashed and absorbed the human souls of more than 10 cultivators in an instant. A look of satisfaction appeared on Cherry Blossom Gauz's gorgeous face after absorbing so many powerful human souls. Cherry Blossom Gauz's injuries had fully recovered, and he was one step closer to his peak condition. At this time, his specter body was quietly undergoing some changes, and he was much stronger than when he was on 13 Spectre. If killing the silverback demon ape with a single palm strike was considered stunning, killing more than 10 Yuanying peak experts of the school of beast taming with a single slash, and all of them were killed along with their magical pets, that was a bit shocking. Whether it was the beast taming sect or the spirit cultivator city, they all stopped at this moment and stared blankly at Li Daochong. Li Daochong turned a deaf ear to him and appeared in front of Boyazi in a flash, sending the great ape flying with a single punch. "Are you the city lord?" Li Daochong asked. "That's right. May I know where you're from?" Boyazi faced Li Daochong at such a close distance, and an inexplicable sense of oppression made him feel like running away. The aura of this ridiculously strong young spirit cultivator wasn't that strong. At least, Boyazi could sense that his cultivation was only at the Gene Dance stage. But his battle strength was there, and it was obvious that he wasn't just a Gene Dan cultivator. Boyazi couldn't sense the other party's strength, and there was only one possibility. This young spirit cultivator's cultivation was far above his. "You've burned your primordial spirit and won't live for long. But I can extend your lifespan for a year, so you won't die immediately. At the same time, I can also help you clear out the beast tide." Li Daochong went straight to the point. As a soul formation cultivator, Boyazi definitely wouldn't believe that a pie would fall from the sky. The old city lord naturally understood that this young cultivator in front of him wanted something. So he said, "Since you've said so, then you must have a condition." "Say it, what condition?" "As long as it's something this old man can give or do, it's fine." Boyazi didn't have a choice. Compared to Spirit Cultivator City being massacred, paying a price in exchange was worth it. "You have the heart of spirit?" Li Daochong asked. Boyazi's heart skipped a beat. His first reaction was that he was shocked. Not many people in Spirit Cultivator City knew about this secret, and only those who had reached the elder level had the qualifications to know. How did he know? However, his doubts only lasted for a short period of time. Boyazi's mood returned to normal, and a trace of bitterness appeared on his old face. With the strength of this young man in front of him, there was no need for him to bargain or make a deal with him. If he wanted to snatch it, what could he do? In front of absolute power, all concealment was meaningless. Rather than playing dumb, it was better to admit it. Although the Heart of Spirit was one of the 3 great inheritances of Spirit Cultivator City, Spirit Cultivator City was about to be destroyed. Boyazi didn't hide it and directly replied, "That's right, there is indeed a Heart of Spirit. My exchange condition is this Heart of Spirit." Li Daochong said indifferently. "Sure." Boyazi agreed without even thinking. As long as he could save Spirit Cultivator City, Boyazi wouldn't be reluctant to part with it. Li Daochong nodded slightly and hit Boyazi's chest with his palm. It was the same as when he hit the female cultivator beside Fairy Xianlo. In fact, Li Daochong was using a fierce force to forcefully extinguish the primordial spirit fire. Of course, this could only be done when Li Daochong's strength far exceeded his opponent's. Otherwise, it would be useless. Boyazi spat out a mouthful of black blood. His youthful appearance was like a flower that had been tainted by filth, quickly withering. Not long after, Boyazi looked decades older than his original state. His hair was white, and his face was so densely wrinkled that it was almost impossible to see his original appearance. This was the life force that was taken away by burning one's primordial spirit. If not for Li Daochong's help, Boyazi would have turned into a pile of bones in at most half a minute. Li Daochong struck out with his palm and disappeared. A green light shot into the beast's tide, followed by a white figure. One green and one white. Everywhere they passed, not a single armor was left. A rain of blood filled the air. The demon wolves didn't even know what was going on before they were bombarded into pieces. The beast-tide army that the beast-taming sect was so proud of was inferior to a group of ants in front of Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze. The powerful demon apes were also unable to withstand a single blow. The wolf vultures in the air felt that something was wrong and wanted to escape. However, before they could turn around and fly away, a round of Tsung ink light accompanied by a white figure came crashing down. Clang, clang. The wolf vultures only had time to let out a few intermittent cries before they were completely obliterated in the air. Nothing was left. No blood, no corpses, nothing. They were truly vaporized. However, their beast cores were all stored in Li Daochong's storage ring. Li Daochong's real goal was to collect these beast cores. The beast tied on the ground began to fall into chaos. Many demon wolves and demon apes began to flee in fear. However, if those in the air couldn't escape, how could those on the ground escape? The disciples of the beast-taming sect were already scared out of their wits. No matter how much Sha Lauer and Samucha shouted, no one listened to them. Motherf Asterisker, who dares to run away? Kill them all. Sha Lauer cursed. Normally, when we need cultivation resources, each and every one of you are like wolves and tigers. Now that we need you, you're like stray dogs. What use do I have for you? Samucha was flustered and exasperated. However, the disciples of the beast-taming sect who were fleeing in all directions didn't care about what Sha Lauer and Samucha were saying. At this time, what was more important than their lives? Who cares if you're Sha Lauer or Samucha? Why don't you go up yourselves? You want us to be cannon fodder? In your dreams. Seeing that cursing was useless, Samucha directly attacked. With a palm strike, he killed 2 of the disciples who were running away. Not only did this not stop the disciples of the beast-taming sect from fleeing, but it also made the situation even more chaotic. Samucha's eyes narrowed. He simply ignored the disciples who were running away and silently chanted an incantation. The great ape and flying lizard quickly approached Samucha's side. Samucha lightly jumped onto the great ape's shoulder, while the flying lizard floated beside him. Samucha pointed at Li Daochong and roared, "Yen Lu Guang, go, tear that spirit cultivator to shreds." Kaboom! Just as Samucha finished speaking, a blue-gold lightning bolt descended from the sky and struck the great ape's body. The lightning flowed, sizzling, and flowed back and forth on the great ape's body. Rumble, the great ape's eyes rolled back, and it fell on its back. Its entire body was charred black. Samucha was also invaded by the lightning power. The magic robes on his body were burned, and the charred corners of his mouth twitched slightly. When the lightning struck, the flying lizard reacted quickly and actually dodged to the side. However, before he could stabilize himself, another smaller bolt of lightning struck down and blasted him into smithereens. After Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze took action, the ferocious beast tide was completely routed in a few breaths of time. Li Daochong had collected more than 50,000 beast cores, while Cherry Blossom Gauze's target was the disciples of the beast-taming sect. More than 2,000 souls of demonic cultivators were devoured by Cherry Blossom Gauze. This feast was very satisfying. If not for Li Daochong reminding Cherry Blossom Gauze not to kill them all, our Empress Wu Ho would definitely have devoured all 5,000 demonic cultivators of the beast-taming sect. Chapter 588. The Beast Tide, which was like the end of the world for Spirit Cultivator City, was not worth mentioning in front of Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze. Only a few scattered demonic beasts managed to escape, as well as the disciples of the beast-taming sect that Li Daochong was too lazy to kill. As for Samucha and Sha Lauer, they were both turned into charcoal by Li Daochong's Yang Lightning. Li Daochong did not give their souls to Cherry Blossom Gauze. Instead, he swallowed them himself. The spirit chi in Li Daochong's body increased. Although he did not level up, his cultivation had reached the peak of the early soul formation stage. Under the shocked gazes of the cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City, Li Daochong and Cherry Blossom Gauze landed on the balcony above the city gate. Boyazi and Supreme Wandering Dragon looked at each other and knelt down on one knee at the same time. The former said sincerely, "Thank you for your help, fellow cultivator. Please accept Boyazi's bow." Li Daochong raised his hand, and a gentle force rose from the ground, lifting Boyazi and Supreme Wandering Dragon up. In terms of cultivation, Li Daochong was about the same as the two soul formation cultivators. His battle strength was far superior to theirs. However, in terms of age, Li Daochong was a junior. Li Daochong was not used to having two old cultivators who had lived for hundreds of years kneel to him. "Little brother, are you really a spirit cultivator?" Xian could not suppress her curiosity and asked. Xian, don't be rude. Is little brother something you can call? How can you judge a spirit cultivator's age based on his appearance? Not to mention you, even mother has to call him senior. The middle-aged lady immediately stopped her. Xian pouted and did not dare to refute her mother. However, her big eyes were looking at Li Daochong, waiting for an answer. Cultivators defy the heavens and cultivate the Tao. There's no need to stick to trifles. It's just a form of address. Don't take it so seriously, Li Daochong said calmly. The middle-aged woman nodded slightly. Senior is right. I was too sensitive. It's fine, Li Daochong turned to Xian and said, "Little sister, of course I'm a spirit cultivator. I didn't know spirit cultivators could be so strong," Xian said in surprise. Looking at Xian's shocked expression, Li Daochong felt that it was a little funny. Spirit Cultivator City was out of touch with the outside world and was surrounded by Devil Cultivator and Ghost Cultivator all day long. Spirit cultivators were the true orthodoxy of the spirit realm. Demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators could not survive outside the Black Prison and were forced to seek refuge in the Black Prison. Outside of the Black Prison, devil cultivators and ghost cultivators did not dare to show their faces. Once they were exposed, there would immediately be a large number of spirit cultivators who would kill them to obtain rewards from the government. In the Black Prison, spirit cultivators became the weaker party and were bullied and humiliated. Little sister, spirit cultivators can't be so strong. They've always been strong, Silver Bottle could not help but say. No, spirit cultivators cultivate slowly and consume a lot of energy. Most of them are mediocre and have no talent. Even if they have some talent, it's very limited. There are also many bottlenecks in the cultivation process. Xion immediately said a lot of bad things about spirit cultivators. Who said spirit cultivators cultivate slowly? In the outside world, there are as many Yuanian cultivators in their 20s as there are hairs on a cow. Silver Bottle looked at Xion strangely and replied. Originally, the conversation between the two girls would not attract too much attention, but when Silver Bottle said this, the crowd was shocked. The hundreds of spirit cultivators on the city wall all looked at Silver Bottle as if they were looking at a monster. They felt that this little girl spoke without thinking and bragged to the heavens. Little sister, you can't talk nonsense. There are as many Yuanian cultivators in their 20s as there are hairs on a cow. How is that possible? The youngest Yuanian cultivator in the history of Spirit Cultivator City also condensed a Yuanian at the age of 35, a spirit cultivator said. Humph. As soon as the spirit cultivator finished speaking, Li Daochong snorted coldly. The spirit cultivator took more than 10 steps back and hit the railing of the city wall heavily, almost falling down. Li Daochong did not use any true force, only the sound waves. Otherwise, the spirit cultivator would have been shattered into pieces. Little sister, who are you to call? Do you think my maid will talk nonsense? Li Daochong's silver color was bone-chilling with a hint of killing intent. His entire state was completely different from before. A second ago, Li Daochong was still an amiable high-level cultivator, but in the blink of an eye, killing intent filled the entire area. Hundreds of spirit cultivators, including Boyazi and true Lord Wandering Dragon, felt a chill down their spines, as if they were on the verge of death. Just now, because of Li Daochong's gentle attitude, they had forgotten the strength of the young man in front of them. If they angered him, Spirit Cultivator City would really be finished. Facing the beast-taming school, they might have a chance of survival, but facing this person, they had no chance at all. Boyazi and true Lord Wandering Dragon judged that this young spirit cultivator's strength was comparable to some of the upper echelons of the Black Prison Three Heads. Li Daochong originally wanted to help a group of Spirit Cultivator City and leave some cultivation methods for them, seeing that they were all from the same origin. But at this moment, he had no such thoughts. A pitiful person must have something to hate. This sentence was not wrong at all. For Spirit Cultivator City to fall to such a state, other than external factors, their own problems might be even greater. The Spirit Cultivator was so scared that his legs went soft, and he almost knelt down. His intestines were green with regret. According to the agreement, give it to me. Li Daochong lost his patience and looked coldly at Boyazi. Boyazi's old face that was so old that it was somewhat sinister revealed a trace of bitterness. He glared at the spirit cultivator who spoke nonsense just now. To be able to befriend such a spirit cultivator was Spirit Cultivator City's opportunity. It was even possible to completely change the fate of Spirit Cultivator City, but because of a single sentence, this opportunity was ruined. Rotten wood cannot be carved. There is no reverence at all. Boyazi sighed in his heart. Suddenly, he realized that the Spirit Cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City were indeed not up to par. Fellow Taoist, follow me. Boyazi nodded. Boyazi stood on a disc-shaped magic treasure and slowly flew into the city. Li Daochong, Silver Bottle, and Cherry Blossom Gauze slowly floated up and followed Boyazi. Li Daochong and the other two followed Boyazi to an unremarkable bungalow in Spirit Cultivator City. From the outside, it looked like a very ordinary house, but upon entering, it was a completely different world. This bungalow was actually a spire that went deep into the ground, and the space inside was much larger than what it looked like from the outside. This was the ancestral spirit pagoda of Spirit Cultivator City. The 1,000 years of foundation of Spirit Cultivator City were all hidden here. Not to mention outsiders, even the spirit cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City were unable to enter. In the entire Spirit Cultivator City, only Boyazi and true Lord Wandering Dragon could enter. Even Commander Xiao Yin was unable to enter. When Boyazi brought Li Daochong and the other two inside, the other cultivators of Spirit Cultivator City who followed them all revealed looks of surprise and bewilderment. There were even people who questioned, "What is the old city lord doing? How can you casually bring outsiders into this place? Is the old city lord confused? Commander Xiao Yin, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and stop them." For a moment, all sorts of voices rose and fell. True Lord Wandering Dragon shook his head slightly. At this moment, he finally found the crux of why Spirit Cultivator City was getting worse and worse. How could Boyazi be confused? It was just that in the face of such an existence, the entire Spirit Cultivator City had no secrets to speak of. That terrifying young man, as long as he was willing, could erase Spirit Cultivator City from the black prison with a raise of his hand. At this time, Li Daochong had already entered the treasure pavilion at the bottom of the ancestral spirit pagoda under Boyazi's lead. The protective spirit array here was extremely powerful, and there were more than 1,000 mechanisms. Any one of them would cause an extremely strong reaction. Even a late-stage, semi-god realm cultivator might not be able to break through. The space on the last floor was obviously much smaller than the previous 10 or so floors. However, the spirit energy here was much denser than above. This floor was divided into 3 parts: a cultivation room, an ancestral hall with many rites, and a treasure pavilion. There were many display shelves in the treasure pavilion, and on them were many strange materials and all sorts of magic treasures. On a table in the corner, there was a wooden box covered in dust. It looked like it had not been touched for many years. This was a treasure pavilion, but when Li Daochong entered, he did not feel too much spirit energy. If there were any powerful magic treasures, the treasure pavilion would definitely explode with spirit energy, and it would be impossible to hide them. Boyazi carefully picked up the wooden box, blew away the dust on it, and wiped it clean with his sleeve. Only then did he pass it to Li Daochong. "Fellow Taoist, the heart of spirit is in this wooden box. Please take a look. If you feel that it is not enough, fellow Taoist can choose any of the collections in the treasure pavilion." Boyazi only wanted to do his best to mend the rift left by the spirit cultivator's rude words. The moment Li Daochong took the wooden box, the spirit energy in his body jumped violently. Although the spirit state was pure, when Shui and I came into close contact with the heart of spirit, she could not hide her emotions. Condensing a spirit body and stabilizing, it was the ultimate goal of every spirit. Without a physical body, there was not much difference between spirits and ghosts. They were both energy life forms. The only difference was that spirits only needed to absorb the spirit energy of heaven and earth to survive and evolve, while ghosts needed to absorb all negative things and human souls. Li Daochong curiously opened the wooden box. When a crack opened, a dazzling light shot out from within. A pure yet powerful spirit chi was released from within, but the interior of this spirit chi seemed to be a little chaotic. When the wooden box was fully opened, there was a small, translucent stone in the shape of a rainbow star. "Li Daochong, this is the heart of spirit." Xuanyi's voice actually trembled. "How do I use it to create a spirit body?" Li Daochong immediately asked. "Not here. We need to find a secluded place. You can separate me, and then I will merge with the heart of spirit to hatch. I can't determine how long this process will take. If the degree of fusion is high, I can hatch a spirit body in a few days. If the degree of fusion is not high, I might not wake up for 1,000 years. Usually, I still need a year or two, Xuanai replied. You won't wake up for 1,000 years? Isn't that very risky? Li Daochong pursed his lips. If that's really the case, then I can only accept my fate. It's extremely difficult to breed a spirit body. If a spirit body can't be formed after 500 years, then it will disintegrate on its own, leaving nothing behind. Xuanai has been formed for over 400 years, and I've had 2 chances to breed a heart of spirit. Unfortunately, I failed both times due to unexpected events. It's worth it to take this risk when my lifespan is nearing its end. It's just a matter of disappearing sooner or later, Xuanai said frankly. If that's the case, then it's fine. Li Daochong shrugged, then closed the wooden box and put it into his storage ring. After obtaining the Heart of Spirit, Li Daochong had no intention of staying any longer. He was about to leave with the 2 women and find a secluded place to separate Xuanai. Boyazi hesitated for a moment, then said, Fellow cultivator, is 1 heart of spirit enough? Li Daochong glanced at Boyazi, then said, It's enough. After saying that, he continued to walk out of the treasury. Boyazi continued, Fellow cultivator, the weapon you're using is a sky profound high-grade treasured saber. In this old man's opinion, it's a good saber, but with your strength, I'm afraid this saber won't be enough. Li Daochong's footsteps paused. Spirit Cultivation City has good sabers? Boyazi slowly said, Spirit Cultivation City doesn't have good sabers, but we have good materials and good weapon refiners. Most importantly, we have an ownerless weapon spirit. If this old man's eyes aren't blurry, then fellow cultivator saber is missing a weapon spirit. Once it fuses with the weapon spirit, fellow cultivator saber will enter a whole new level. Immortal transformation spirit treasures are treasures that even void refinement cultivators covet. Isn't fellow cultivator tempted? Oh, is that so? Your spirit cultivation city has a weapon refiner that can refine immortal transformation spirit treasures? Li Daochong stroked his chin, his heart moved. After Li Daochong had leveled up 3 times, the Tsang ink was clearly weak. When he used it just now, Li Daochong didn't dare to use too much force, afraid that he would break the Tsang ink if he used too much force. City Lord suddenly proposed to help Li forge a treasure. It can't be just to do a good deed, right? Li Daochong's eyes narrowed slightly. Boyazi's intentions were already clear enough, so it was impossible that he didn't have any ulterior motives. Li Daochong originally didn't like to owe others favors, so it was naturally best if they each took what they needed and didn't owe each other anything. Since fellow Taoist has asked, this old man won't keep you in suspense. In 10 days, there will be a secret high-end trade fair in the Black Prison City, and all the participants will be the big shots of the Black Prison region. The 3 big shots of the Black Prison will definitely not be absent. This old man received news earlier that there will be a lot of Sky Profound level cultivation methods and Sky Profound level spirit herb for sale at this trade fair. What Spirit Cultivation City lacks right now are cultivation methods and spirit herbs. If it's convenient for fellow Taoist, can you come with this old man in 10 days and act as a protector of Spirit Cultivation City? Boyazi said with a somewhat pleading tone. To put it bluntly, he wanted Li Daochong to be a bodyguard for once. Boyazi was worried that it would be easy to buy things, but it wouldn't be so easy to bring them back to Spirit Cultivation City. With Spirit Cultivation City's strength, he was afraid that once they left the trade fair, they would be snatched away by others. Sure, Li Daochong didn't think too much about it and immediately agreed. This deal was worth it. There was nothing to think about. Moreover, he was in such a trade fair to sell the devil pills. Chapter 589. Seeing Li Daochong agree, Boyazi was overjoyed. He immediately began to arrange the reception of Li Daochong and the other 2, but was stopped by Li Daochong. City Lord, can you lend this place to Mr. Li for 10 days? You can call us after 10 days. Li Daochong saw that this underground pagoda was very hidden. Since they were not leaving, he might as well separate from Xuan Ai here. Boyazi hesitated for a moment. This was the forbidden area of Spirit Cultivation City. Bringing an outsider in had already violated the rules set by the ancestors. However, this was a special time. This fellow Taoist, Li, was the benefactor of Spirit Cultivation City. Without him, Spirit Cultivation City would have been gone. Bringing him into the ancestral Spirit Pagoda was fine. However, staying here for 10 days was a completely different matter. Even as the city lord, Boyazi could not make up his mind. However, under Li Daocheng's gaze, the old city lord did not dare to hesitate. The trade fair in 10 days was the Tianfeng trade fair that had been in the Black Prison for 500 years. It was held once every 10 years. If you missed it, you would have to wait another 10 years. This was the 51st Tianfeng trade fair, and it had an extremely high reputation. There were countless auctions and trade fairs in the Black Prison, but most of them did not have a good reputation. You could buy almost anything you wanted in the Black Prison, but trading here was extremely risky. If you did not have absolute strength, even if you had the money to buy the item, there was a high chance that you would not be able to bring it back alive. 80% of the people in the Black Prison were demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators. They would not talk about morals and rules with you. If you did not get the good stuff, then you would snatch it. This was the thought of all the cultivators here. There were even cases of people snatching items in public at auctions. If you did not have the strength, shopping here was equivalent to courting death. However, the Tianfeng Trade Fair was an exception. From the first one until now, 500 years had passed. No matter how chaotic the Black Prison was, no one dared to behave atrociously at the Tianfeng Trade Fair. As for the reason, there was only one, and that was that they could not afford to offend. There was no cultivation company or sect behind the Tianfeng Trade Fair. It was founded by Patriarch Tianfeng. The first 3 sessions were not peaceful, but they were all settled by old ancestor Tianfeng with thunderous means. Old ancestor Tianfeng's original intention was to exchange for what he wanted. At the 3rd Sky Peak Trading Fair, the 5 most powerful demonic cultivators from the Black Prison were all present. The 5 of them wanted to intimidate old ancestor Tianfeng. Who would have thought that before the 5 of them could do anything, old ancestor Tianfeng would slap 2 of them to death on the spot. Instant kill, a true instant kill. Among the 5, the lowest cultivation base was at the early Void Refinement realm, while the highest was at the late Void Refinement realm. However, whether it was then or now, this level of cultivation was definitely a great expert. Even in the 3 great cultivation empires, they could not be underestimated. However, the 5 of them were like withered leaves in the wind in front of old ancestor Tianfeng, and he could easily destroy them. The 2 people who were slapped to death were the 2 with the highest cultivation bases among the 5 people. Both of them were at the late Void Refinement realm. Back then, all the cultivators present were shocked by old ancestor Tianfeng's terrifying strength. Before this, no one knew the depth of old ancestor Tianfeng's cultivation. However, after this incident, old ancestor Tianfeng's cultivation base was clear at a glance. He was undoubtedly a body integration stage old devil. Otherwise, how could he have killed 2 late Void Refinement cultivators with a single palm strike? After old ancestor Tianfeng made his move this time, he had intimidated the entire Black Prison region. A body integration stage cultivator was definitely in existence that stood at the top of the pyramid. Body integration cultivators were the backbone of the 3 great cultivation empires. In the past 1,000 years in the Black Prison, there were not many unification stage cultivators that appeared. Most of them were elusive, and Patriarch Tianfeng was the only unification stage cultivator that was relatively stable. Old ancestor Tianfeng had also been the #1 expert in the Black Prison for 500 years, and no one could shake his position. In fact, until now, no one knew the true cultivation level of old ancestor Tianfeng. They only guessed that he was at the body integration stage. As for whether he was at the early, middle, late, or pinnacle stage, no one knew. However, no matter which stage of the body integration stage Patriarch Tianfeng was at, he was still the strongest and most terrifying existence in the Black Prison. Old ancestor Tianfeng came and went without a trace, and only appeared at the Tianfeng Trade Fair once every 10 years. It had been like this for 500 years, and there had never been an exception. As for whether or not old ancestor Tianfeng was in the Black Prison region, no one knew. In short, no matter what happened in the Black Prison region, this old ancestor Tianfeng was not interested in it. Spirit Cultivator City only participated in the first 20 sessions of the Tianfeng Trade Fair and did not participate in the next 30 sessions. In fact, it was not that Spirit Cultivator City did not participate, but that they did not dare to participate. The last time Spirit Cultivator City participated in the Tianfeng Trade Fair was 300 years ago. At that time, the city lord was not Boyazi and was the last almighty of the previous generation of spirit cultivators. The peak of the semi-god realm was only one step away from the void refinement stage. At that time, Spirit Cultivator City could be considered a relatively powerful force in the Black Prison. However, at that time, Spirit Cultivator City had more than 10 spirit cultivators. Under the lead of the previous city lord, they wantonly purchased a large amount of items at the trade fair. In the end, they were ambushed on the way back, and more than half of the items they bought were stolen. If not for the previous city lord risking his life to protect them, he would have been able to keep a portion of the items. However, in the end, due to his heavy injuries, the previous city lord died a year later. At that time, only 3 spirit cultivators survived, and 2 of them were Boyazi and True Lord Roaming Dragon. After that, Spirit Cultivator City was like a frightened cat and never participated in the Tianfeng Trade Fair again. Boyazi had decided to participate in this Tianfeng Trade Fair 2 years ago. At that time, the Elders Guild had firmly disagreed, but after listening to Boyazi's explanation, they finally passed the resolution. Boyazi's meaning was that they could buy some low-end items at the trade fair. This way, they wouldn't attract the attention of those powerful devil cultivator. No one would find trouble to snatch worthless things. After all, being a bandit was a high-risk job. 300 years ago, when Spirit Cultivator City was robbed, it was unknown who was behind it. However, at that time, there were a total of 28 devil cultivator who participated in the robbery, and they only succeeded after paying the price of 18 devil cultivator casualties. Therefore, without a high reward, no one would take the risk. No one would do something like try and steal a chicken, only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. As long as the items purchased were not too tempting, they would be safe. Of course, this was only Boyazi's previous thought, but at this moment, his thoughts had changed. Li Daocheng's appearance caused Boyazi to have more thoughts. His lifespan was almost up, and he still had a year to live. Right now, he was no different from a living dead. The primordial spirit in his body had already been burned to ashes. He was even weaker than an ordinary person and had no strength to truss up a chicken. Boyazi hoped to do something for Spirit Cultivator City before he died. Spirit Cultivator City was not considered strong in the Black Prison, but their financial resources were not inferior to the big 3 of the Black Prison, and even surpassed them. However, Spirit Cultivator City knew the principle of not revealing their wealth, so on the surface, it was just a rumor of an ancestral treasure. Only the beast-taming sect would be interested in such a small thing, and the big 3 of the Black Prison couldn't be bothered to ask about it. Everyone knew that a skinny camel was bigger than a horse. In the end, Spirit Cultivator City had some foundation back then. For this little thing, if you forced Spirit Cultivator City into a corner and fought to the death, you wouldn't feel good either. At the very least, you would have to pay a big price. The beast-taming sect had also reached the juncture of the sect's development, which was why they had invaded Spirit Cultivator City with all their might. Otherwise, the beast-taming sect would not have so easily started a war with Spirit Cultivator City. Of course, no one knew the true wealth of Spirit Cultivator City. Even the spirit cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City did not know. Only Boyazi and True Lord Wandering Dragon knew. There was a spirit vein tens of thousands of feet underground in Spirit Cultivator City. Because it was buried very deep, the vein was relatively small, and it was also surrounded by a layer of black demon rock. Even a body fusion old devil would not be able to sense it. It was purely an accident that Spirit Cultivator City was able to discover this vein. Otherwise, no one would know that there was such a vein deep underground even after a few 100 million years. Although this vein was not big, it was a high-grade vein. If it was completely excavated, it could be used to obtain more than hundreds of millions of high-grade spirit stones. This was a huge sum of money. After so many years, Spirit Cultivator City had been extremely careful in mining. Only when needed would they take some out. This vein was also connected to Spirit Cultivator City's defensive array. With Li Daochong, Boyazi had even more expectations. He could seize this opportunity to make good use of the vein and leave behind useful wealth for Spirit Cultivator City. Boyazi did not hesitate for too long. He steeled his heart and said to Li Daochong, "If fellow Taoist likes this place, then let's stay here for the next 10 days. Brother Wandering Dragon and I will be at the top level to help fellow Taoist upgrade his treasure blade. If fellow Taoist needs anything, just send us a sound transmission." Li Daochong nodded and then walked out of the treasure pavilion. This place was filled with magic treasure materials and the like, and the space was narrow, so it was naturally not suitable for doing things. Li Daochong came to the cultivation room. Boyazi naturally understood and opened the door to the cultivation room. This was a Nayu cultivation room, and the space inside was much larger than the outside. Boyazi was very tactful. He opened the door and left. Li Daochong closed the door and instructed Luo Yingsha to stand guard. Silver Bottle went to the side and began cultivating. The process of separating Shui and I was not complicated, but it was very dangerous, so he had to be careful and do it bit by bit. In fact, Shui and I had already completely fused with Li Daochong's spirit energy, so it wouldn't be a problem if he just left it alone. However, in order to separate it, that strand of spirit energy contained Xueni's soul. The soul was very fragile, and if one wasn't careful, it could turn into ashes. Li Daochong spent a day and a night, expending a lot of energy, and finally separated Shui and I. Shui and I regained her freedom. Without saying anything, she directly drilled into the heart of spirit and quickly stopped breathing. The restless spirit energy on the heart of spirit also calmed down and gradually dimmed, all of it being absorbed into the heart of spirit. Chapter 590. After Shui and I entered the heart of spirit, many silk-like things grew out of the rainbow-colored stone and wrapped around the stone, turning it into a cocoon the size of a duck egg. Xueni's aura disappeared without a trace. Li Daochong held the cocoon and looked at it before storing it in his storage ring. Next, Li Daochong took out more than 50,000 beast cores and smelted them together. Although these were beast cores of demonic beasts and contained dense demonic qi, there was also a lot of spiritual qi in them. Li Daochong collected these beast cores and did not shatter them, naturally for Silver Bottle. After 3 days and 3 nights, Li Daochong removed all the impurities from the beast cores, absorbed the demonic qi, and fused the beast cores together. In the end, he refined a spirit monarch pill. If this pill were to be sold on the market, it would be worth as much as an immortal level pill. Li Daochong's main goal on this trip to the Black Prison was Silver Bottle. As soon as the spirit monarch pill was refined, he fed it to Silver Bottle. "Daochong, you seem to care a lot about this girl." Cherry Blossom Gauze didn't know why, but when she saw Li Daochong treat Silver Bottle so well, she couldn't help but feel a trace of jealousy. Li Daochong glanced at Cherry Blossom Gauze and said, "She is the most important person in my life. There are some things that you won't understand if you haven't experienced them." Cherry Blossom Gauze smiled and said, "I will try my best to experience your human emotions." Li Daochong smiled and said, "Don't you already have one? You don't have to experience it on purpose. Just let nature take its course." Cherry Blossom Gauze blinked and looked at Li Daochong as if she didn't understand. "I already have one." Li Daochong didn't answer, and only nodded before turning his attention to Silver Bottle. The spiritual chi of the spirit monarch pill was too overbearing for Silver Bottle. With her ability, she couldn't digest it at all. Li Daocheng had to help Silver Bottle digest it. Otherwise, the little girl would explode from the boundless spiritual chi. Li Daocheng controlled all the medicinal power of the spirit monarch pill and released it bit by bit into Silver Bottle's foundation establishment placenta. If someone knew Silver Bottle's cultivation process, they would definitely be envious. It was good to have someone's protection. Yinping's cultivation base rose rapidly, and in less than an hour, she would make a huge leap. In half a day, Silver Bottle broke into the Gene Dance stage. The strange thing was that the Thunder Tribulation did not appear. Li Daocheng was prepared to help Yinping resist the Thunder Tribulation. However, nothing. Li Daocheng recalled that it was the same when he was on the Snowstorm Star. He had advanced 3 levels in a row and entered the Huashan realm in one fell swoop, but there was no Thunder Tribulation. It wasn't that Li Daocheng had neglected this problem, but he hadn't had the time to delve into it. Now that he was helping Silver Bottle to break through, he didn't have the time to think too much about it. Li Daocheng stopped thinking about it and focused on helping Silver Bottle improve her cultivation. At this moment, only a quarter of the medicinal power of the Spirit Monarch pill had been digested. After another half a day, Silver Bottle broke through the Gene Dan early stage and entered the Gene Dan middle stage. The medicinal power continued to be released. 2 days later, Silver Bottle successfully condensed Yuanying and became an early-stage Yuanying cultivator. The medicinal power of the Spirit Monarch pill was completely absorbed. Li Daocheng consumed a lot of energy, but it was much better than the last time he used his spiritual chi to nourish Silver Bottle. This time, he just consumed too much energy. He could recover after taking a few recovery spirit pills and adjusting his breath for a day. Silver Bottle, who had reached the Yuanying cultivator, looked at her hands in disbelief. Could a card slave become a Yuanying cultivator? Even if Silver Bottle really felt her Yuanying, she still couldn't believe it. For the rest of the time, Li Daocheng and the other two stabilized their cultivation. They all gained something from destroying the beast-taming sect. Among them, Cherry Blossom Gauze gained the most. Her condition was getting better and better, and she had already recovered 2/3 of her previous level. However, her current state seemed to have reached a critical point. Cherry Blossom Gauze faintly felt that if she continued to improve, it was very likely that she would trigger the 9 heavens lightning tribulation. What Li Daocheng and the other two were doing in the Ancestral Spirit Tower, the outside world naturally didn't know. 7 days ago, Boyazi agreed to let Li Daocheng stay in the Ancestral Spirit Tower, which caused a huge uproar in Spirit Cultivation City. The Elders Guild almost rioted. If it wasn't for True Lord Wandering Dragon standing on Boyazi's side, the old city lord who had lost his cultivation wouldn't have been able to control the situation. But even with True Lord Wandering Dragon's support, the Elders Guild still didn't let it go. City Lord, the Ancestral Spirit Tower is not only a forbidden area left behind by the ancestors of Spirit Cultivation City, but also the Ancestral Hall of the Ancestors. How can we let an outsider stay inside for 10 days? That's right, City Lord, you can't be muddle-headed. The Ancestral Spirit Tower contains all the secrets of Spirit Cultivation City. 10 days is enough to completely turn Spirit Cultivation City upside down. City Lord, we can give more benefits to that senior, but letting him stay in the Ancestral Spirit Tower for 10 days is really a disgrace to the ancestors. The elders of the Council of Elders chimed in one after another, their spittle flying all over the place. Everything they said was logical and logical. However, in Boyazi's eyes, these former colleagues in front of him now looked like stubborn pedantics. Boyazi couldn't be bothered to say another word. But when he didn't say anything, these pedantics became even more enthusiastic, and the scene became a little chaotic. If Fairy Sien hadn't returned at this juncture, who knew how long this dispute would have lasted? Report. A loud shout came from outside the City Lord's mansion. and a young spirit cultivator rushed in. This shout finally made the noisy city lord's mansion quiet down. The soldier walked in front of Boyazi and knelt down on one knee. Reporting to City Lord, Sien Lu has returned. Boyazi's expression brightened. It's good that she's back. Let her in quickly. Yes. The soldier answered and retreated. Not long after, Fairy Sien Lu brought Xiao Yun and a few spirit cultivators into the City Lord's mansion. Sien Lu greets the City Lord. Sien Lu walked in front of Boyazi and bowed, but there was a strong, strange expression on her face. From entering the city to the City Lord's mansion, Sien Lu saw that it was a mess outside. All the elders were gathered in the City Lord's mansion, but there wasn't even a shadow of the beast's tide. A big question mark rose in Sien Li's heart. Flying all the way, Sien Li used the fastest speed she could reach. Previously, she had clearly sensed a powerful demonic aura. But very quickly, this terrifying demonic aura weakened rapidly until it disappeared. What exactly happened? No need to be so polite. Did you find the Sky Thunderstone? Boyazi asked. I didn't disappoint the City Lord. Sien Lu found the Sky Thunderstone. Sien Lu said as she stretched out her hand, and a square metal box appeared in her hand. Boyazi's turbid old eyes were filled with urgency. He picked up the metal box and opened it. A blue-gold stone, half the size of a palm, was displayed in the metal box. Electricity surged on the stone, dazzling to the eye. The moment the box was opened, the entire City Lord's mansion dimmed. Many spirit cultivators with weaker cultivations felt a chill. The lightning seemed to want to pierce through them. The Sky Thunderstone was formed from 10,000 years of accumulated clouds. It had a natural restraining effect on all ghosts and monsters. The reason why Spirit Cultivator City could stand on the Black Prison was because of the primordial thunder array set up by the city's ancestors. But decades ago, the Sky Thunderstone in the heart of the primordial thunder array was exhausted, causing the array to be unable to activate. This directly caused Spirit Cultivator City to be exposed. Of course, this matter was strictly kept a secret by Boyazi and the other core members of Spirit Cultivator City. However, there was no wall in the world that didn't leak. A few years ago, the news still leaked out. It was also because of this that the beast-taming sect dared to attack Spirit Cultivator City. If the primordial thunder array was intact, even if Samucha was twice as strong, he wouldn't dare to attack Spirit Cultivator City. After confirming the Sky Thunderstone, Boyazi felt relieved. He then turned around and went to the backyard of the City Lord's mansion. The heart of the primordial thunder array was in the backyard of the City Lord's mansion. The others followed. There was a dry well in the backyard of the City Lord's mansion. It looked unremarkable, as if it had been abandoned for many years. In fact, below the dry well was the heart of the primordial thunder array. Boyazi took a step forward and jumped into the dry well. There was a pentagram groove below, and the center was missing a piece. Boyazi's cultivation was completely lost, so he didn't dare to touch the Sky Thunderstone. At this time, Supreme Wandering Dragon also followed and handed the metal box to the latter. Supreme Wandering Dragon carefully took out the Sky Thunderstone and placed it in the gap. As soon as the Sky Thunderstone was placed, the pentagram suddenly flashed, and then a ray of light shot out in all directions. The entire Spirit Cultivator City trembled slightly, as if some kind of ancient power had been activated. The thunder power in the entire Spirit Cultivator City stirred up a commotion and disappeared a few seconds later. The primordial thunder array was reactivated. Boyazi saw that the primordial thunder array was restored and his heart was relieved. Brother Boya, the crisis of Spirit Cultivator City has finally passed. As long as the primordial thunder array is here, no matter which force in the Black Prison wants to touch us, they will have to think twice. Supreme Wandering Dragon heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, Sien Lu deserves the credit. Boyazi said. After leaving the dry well, everyone was above. Like the ancestral Spirit Pagoda, this was a forbidden area of Spirit Cultivator City. Other than Boyazi and Supreme Wandering Dragon, no one else could enter. Sien Lu, the millions of people in Spirit Cultivator City have to thank you. You have given Spirit Cultivator City the capital to continue for 100 years. Please accept Boyazi's bow. Boyazi said, as he was about to kneel down to Xianlu. Xianlu was shocked when she saw this. How could she accept the old city lord's bow? Plop. Xianlu knelt down first and supported Boyazi with both hands. City lord, please don't. Xianlu can't accept it. If the city lord wants to thank someone, it shouldn't be Xianlu. If it wasn't for the help of an expert on the way, Xianlu wouldn't have been able to bring the Sky Thunderstone back, even if she had 9 lives. Oh, Boyazi wanted to insist on bowing, but after hearing Xianli's words, his old face was surprised. What happened on the way? Xianlu then recounted everything that had happened. It turned out that in order to find the Sky Thunderstone, Xianlu had left Spirit Cultivator City for 3 years. The Black Prison was huge. Before the catastrophe, this place was not called the Black Prison, but the Great Prison Planet. The reason for this name was that this cultivation planet was unimaginably huge. Once one entered, it was very difficult to get out. It was like a prison. It was difficult for soul formation cultivators to travel the entire planet because it was too big. Xianlu had been outside for 3 years, searching bitterly, but to no avail. Until a month ago, a spirit cultivator suddenly told Xianlu that there would be an auction on an island west of the Black Prison, and there would be Sky Thunderstones for sale. Xianlu was skeptical, but she still went. In the end, there really was a Sky Thunderstone. In the end, she wanted at a sky-high price of 10 million high-grade spirit stones. However, as soon as they left the island, Xianli's group was chased by the beast-taming sect. Xianlu felt that it was strange. Her whereabouts were extremely hidden. Other than the people accompanying her, no one knew. Moreover, she was already very far away from Spirit Cultivator City. It would take at least a month to fly back. The beast-taming sect was located near Black Prison City, which was quite far from this island. Why would someone from the beast-taming sect appear here? Xianlu immediately suspected that there was a traitor beside her. Then, Xianlu used the mind-reading needle that Boyazi gave her before she left to find the traitor. After reading the needle, Xianlu was shocked. It turned out that the beast-taming sect already knew that she was looking for the Sky Thunderstone 3 years ago. It was also at that time that the beast-taming sect started to make a big move on Spirit Cultivator City. And this auction on the island was a trap from the very beginning. It was a trap that the beast-taming sect had planned. The Sky Thunderstone was real, but the auction was fake. The reason why the beast-taming sect did this was because they were devil cultivators and could not store the Sky Thunderstone intact. This Sky Thunderstone happened to be condensed above this island and was found by the beast-taming sect. They had planned for Xianlu to come here and make her think that it was an auction. They would sell the exposed Heavenly Thunderstone to her at high price. After she put the Heavenly Thunderstone into a special metal box, they would snatch it. However, the beast-taming sect had miscalculated a step. They had underestimated Xianli's strength. Not only did they not catch her, they even let Xianlu find the traitor and run away with the Sky Thunderstone. The people of the beast-taming sect chased after Xianlu while sending a signal to the sect for reinforcements. Just like that, Xianlu led the rest of her entourage and fled. When they were close to Spirit Cultivator City, there were only 7 or 8 people left. Just as they were about to go home, the third master of the beast-taming sect, Sha Laosan, personally came out and stopped Xianlu. If not fully Daochong, Xianlu and the rest would have died without a doubt. Chapter 591. After listening to Xianli's narration, all the spirit cultivators in Spirit Cultivator City broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, they felt a lingering fear towards the sinister and cunning of the beast-taming sect. The heavens are really blessing Spirit Cultivator City. Fortunately, I have the help of 2 nobles. If not for that, I would have become the center of Spirit Cultivator City today. Boyazi looked up at the sky and sighed. 2 nobles? Xianlu did not understand and continued. City Lord, on Xianli's way back, I found out that the beast-taming sect had mobilized the entire sect's power to drive 100,000 beasts to destroy Spirit Cultivation City. When Xian Lu was intercepted by Sha Lao San, I personally heard Sha Lao San say that the beast tide had already started. After Xian Lu was rescued by a noble, I rushed back at top speed. I clearly felt the huge demonic aura, but why did it suddenly disappear? Could it be that the beast tide did not start? Xian Lu, Sha Laosan did not lie to you. The beast-taming sect did indeed launch a general attack on Spirit Cultivator City. The beast tide was like a sea, and Spirit Cultivator City was almost plunged into misery and suffering. Boyazi replied with lingering fear. Xian Li's face was filled with suspicion. Since the beast tide had started, why was Spirit Cultivator City still safe and sound? Xian Lu, did you come back from the east? Seeing Xian Li's puzzled face, Supreme Wandering Dragon asked. Yes, Great Elder. Xian Lu entered the city from the east. Xian Lu replied, No wonder you don't understand. Go take a look outside the west side of the city. Supreme Wandering Dragon suddenly understood. Xian Lu immediately flew into the sky. When she arrived outside the west side of the city, she was immediately stunned. A large part of the western city wall had collapsed, and the outside of the city was charred black, as if it had experienced a vast lightning tribulation. There were tens of thousands of magical beast corpses everywhere. At this moment, there were many cultivators and citizens of Spirit Cultivator City cleaning up the wreckage. These magical beast corpses were also a huge fortune. The meat could be processed and eaten, the internal organs could be used as fertilizer for spirit herbs, and the bones could be used to make all kinds of tools, weapons, and even magic treasure materials. They could also be used to refine medicine. This place had clearly experienced a great battle, and it was a one-sided massacre. The more Xian Lu looked, the more shocked she became. Some of the terrain in the distance had changed, and in the area further away, she could clearly see the traces of the beast tide's footsteps. When Xian Lu returned to the City Lord Manor, the shock on her face was still there, and the doubt in her eyes became even stronger. Xian Lu knew the strength of the beast-taming school better than anyone else. Although the old City Lord and the Great Elder were powerful, they definitely could not contend against 100,000 beast horde, let alone annihilate the beast-taming school with an overwhelming advantage. Even if the old City Lord and the Great Elder joined forces, they might not be a match for Samucha. From Boyazi's words, Xian Lu naturally guessed that an expert had taken action. City Lord, Spirit Cultivator City is bound to have good fortune after surviving a great disaster. I wonder which expert helped us. Xian Lu would like to meet this benefactor, Fairy Xian Lu said sincerely. Xian Lu, this senior expert is in the Ancestral Spirit Tower. One of the elders could not help but say, Ancestral Spirit Pagoda. Xian Lu was shocked. She turned to look at Boyazi with a trace of displeasure in her eyes. Boyazi was able to withstand the pressure of the entire elder's questioning. But when Xian Lu revealed such an expression, the old City Lord actually felt a little guilty and timid. True Lord Roaming Dragon also looked embarrassed. Seeing this, the elders immediately became spirited. City Lord, you haven't forgotten my grandfather's last words to you, have you? The Ancestral Spirit Tower is the foundation of Spirit Cultivator City, a precious treasure left behind by our ancestors. Whether Spirit Cultivator City can regain its glory or not, the Ancestral Spirit Tower is the key. Although we haven't fully understood the Ancestral Spirit Tower until now, since Grandfather said so, he must have his reasons. It's just that we are too stupid to understand it, Xian Lu said seriously. It turned out that Xian Lu was the granddaughter of the previous City Lord. Her status was noble, and even Boyazi had to be courteous. City Lord, how can you let an outsider stay in the Ancestral Spirit Tower? If the secret of the Ancestral Spirit Tower is obtained by an outsider, how will you face the ancestors of Spirit Cultivator City? As Xian Lu spoke, her emotions became somewhat unstable. The Ancestral Spirit Tower was too important to Spirit Cultivator City. It was the soul of Spirit Cultivator City. Boyazi could use his status to suppress others, But in front of the granddaughter of the previous city lord, he could do nothing. If his attitude was not right, it was very likely that it would arouse the anger of the people. Seeing that Boyazi did not speak, Xianlu did not say anything more. She then said, "City Lord, no matter who this person is, he must leave the ancestral spirit tower immediately. Although Spirit Cultivator City is not big, it is still possible to find a quiet and suitable place to stay." With that, Xianlu turned and headed straight for the ancestral spirit tower. Seeing this, the elders immediately followed. Boyazi and True Lord Roaming Dragon looked at each other helplessly, but there was nothing they could do. They could only follow. Boyazi was nervous. Because he had lost his cultivation and his lifespan was almost up, he did not have much energy to argue about anything. His only worry was that he would anger Li Daocheng. A bunch of pedantic people in Spirit Cultivator City really did not know anything. They did not know how powerful that young spirit cultivator was. Xianlu could not wait to leave the ancestral spirit tower. She could not casually enter here. But this time, she brought back the heavenly thunderstone and contributed to Spirit Cultivator City. Her ancestors had stipulated that as long as her contribution reached a certain standard, she could enter the ancestral spirit tower. Xianlu glanced at the inconspicuous ancestral spirit pagoda and walked in with reverence. The elders who came with them could only stand outside, unable to enter. Boyazi and True Monarch Roaming Dragon followed them inside. Just as Xianlu entered the ancestral spirit tower, her eyes moved. A Tsang ink color flashed past her eyes, and a simple Tsang ink-colored long saber lay quietly on a table. Huh? Xianlu was slightly stunned. This saber looked very familiar. Xianlu walked to the table and stared at the long saber. Her expression suddenly changed. She reached out and picked up the long saber, the uncertainty in her eyes disappearing. "Who does this saber belong to?" Xianlu asked. "It belongs to the senior who helped Spirit Cultivator City defeat the Beast Tide. In return, Brother Roaming Dragon and I will upgrade this saber for that senior," Boyazi replied. "It's him." Xianlu's expression suddenly relaxed, and the sense of urgency disappeared. She then asked, "Is this senior tall and slender, wearing an ordinary green martial robe? He looks very young, at most in his 20s? Boyazi and True Lord Roaming Dragon looked at each other, not understanding how Xianlu knew what that senior looked like. "Yes, that's right," Boyazi replied. "City Lord, the one who saved Xianlu was also this senior. If it's him, let him stay here. Xianlu owes him a life." Xianlu looked deeply at the bottom of the ancestral spirit tower, then turned and left. Li Daocheng and the other two, who were in the ancestral spirit tower, naturally did not know that Spirit Cultivator City was in an uproar over this trivial matter. Li Daocheng was not at all interested in the secrets of the ancestral spirit tower. He just felt that it was hidden enough and a good place to cultivate. That was all, and he was too lazy to go around. During the time that Li Daocheng stayed in the ancestral spirit tower, not only was Spirit Cultivator City chaotic, but the entire Black Prison was also very restless. The demon sect suddenly went berserk and carried out a large-scale sweep of the Black Prison. But the outside world did not know why. They only knew that the demon sect was looking for someone. The demon sect's sect master, Qi Kuang, waited for 3 days, but one Mayan did not appear. 3 days ago, someone saw one Mayan's demonic shuttle appear outside the Black Prison and enter the Black Prison. But after entering the Black Prison, when Mayan's demonic shuttle disappeared without a trace. Qi Kuang sent many transmissions to Mayan, but did not receive any response. When Mayan disappeared, as if he had evaporated from the world. Qi Kuang, who was waiting for Mayan to bring back the demon orb, suddenly realized that he might have been played. The anger in his heart erupted like a volcano that had been accumulating for a long time. Qi Kuang personally went to Blizzard Planet and completely erased the snowfield bar from the Blizzard Planet. If not for the snow fairy, Murong Zhu, who had left long ago, it would have perished. That day, Mad Monkey escaped with serious injuries and told Murong Zhu everything that had happened. The latter immediately took Mad Monkey and left Blizzard Planet. When Qi Kuang came to Blizzard Planet to investigate Wen Mayan's whereabouts, Murong Zhu had already brought Mad Monkey to a branch of the Thousand sect that was located in the Black Prison. You're from the Thousand sect? Mad Monkey's body was full of tubes, and his entire body was soaked in a vat of spiritual liquid. Only his head was exposed, and he looked at Murong Zhu in surprise. That's right. Is it strange? Do you think that I alone can open a bar like that on Blizzard Planet and not be provoked for so many years? Murong Zhu looked at Mad Monkey with a smile that was not a smile. Chapter 592. Mad Monkey looked at his old friend, and a smile appeared on his bandaged face. However, as soon as he smiled, he sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. Don't move. Your injuries are very serious. If you wait any longer, you won't be able to be saved. This vat of spirit liquid was specially made for you by our sect's spiritual princess. Soak in it for 7 days, and you'll be full of energy. All right, I won't disturb your recovery. I'll come back in 7 days. Murong Zhu stood up and left. After walking out of the recovery room, Murong Zhu turned left and right and entered a secret room. In the secret room, Qian Yueling and spiritual princess Murong Zhu were discussing something. When they saw Murong Zhu enter, they stopped talking. Murong Zhu greets sect master and spiritual princess. Murong Zhu bowed as soon as she entered. Qian Yueling nodded slightly, and Mu Jiao asked, "How was it? Did Mad Monkey say why when Mayan appeared on the Blizzard Planet?" Murong Zhu's pretty face trembled slightly, and she paused before saying, "When Mayan went to the Blizzard Planet to look for the demonic orb. It was said that Qi Kuang used 100 years of his life to calculate the result." Mu Jiao's expression froze, and her delicate body trembled. Demonic orb? Qian Yueling didn't understand. Jiao, you know about the demonic orb? Mu Jiao calmed down and seemed to be immersed in her memories. After a while, she said, "Sect Master, if Jiao didn't guess wrongly, the demonic orb should be the core of the Grand Wizard of Hades after the mutation of the Dark Ghost. It's similar to the Dark Demon's demonic core, but the demonic orb is even rarer. A Grand Wizard who can condense the demonic orb will become the king of the Dark Demons in the future." Qian Yueling gasped. "The bloodline of the Dark King?" Mu Jiao nodded. "That's right. It's the core of the Grand Wizard of Dark Ghost with the bloodline of the Dark King." Although Qian Yueling had guessed it, she wasn't sure. After hearing Mu Jiao's confirmation, her delicate body trembled. The King of Hell was a supreme existence in the Hades. The people had another name for the King of Hell, King of Hell. They were the gods of the Hades, who could control life and death, and were Mahayana cultivators who were equivalent to true immortals in the spirit realm. Jiao, is there still a Hades in this world? Didn't you calculate that the true reason the Hades attacked the spirit realm over 100,000 years ago was most likely because the Hades had lost control of the underworld monarch? Why would the underworld monarch bloodline appear now? Qian Yueling exclaimed. Sect Master, Jiao only deduced the result. I didn't see it with my own eyes. Back then, I might have overlooked a certain point in my deduction. If the matter of the demonic bead is true, then perhaps the Hades didn't lose control when they devoured the spiritual realm. Instead, they had a purpose. They wanted to create a new Nether King during the battle, Mu Jiao guessed. If that's the case, doesn't that mean the Hades are about to succeed? Qian Yueling continued. I don't think so. That's not right. Qi Kuang can't possibly calculate the demonic bead. He doesn't have that ability. Could it be? Mu Jiao suddenly changed the topic and froze. Could it be what? Qian Yueling suddenly had a bad feeling. Mu Jiao swallowed with difficulty. Sect Master, it's very likely that Qi Kuang has already pledged his allegiance to the Hades. The Hades must have ordered Qi Kuang to obtain the demonic bead. What? Qian Yueling almost shouted. Jiao, if that's the case, doesn't that mean Chi Kuang has nothing to worry about? No matter how powerful the Earl's house and us are, we're still no match for the Hades. Mu Jiaojiao fell silent. Even if her divine telekinesis was strong, she could calculate millions of possibilities with a single thought. However, if the demon sect joined forces with the demon sect, no matter how strong Mu Jiaojiao's divine telekinesis was, she would never be able to deal with the demon sect. If Chi Kuang is really controlled by the Hades, then this game of chess is too big. It's no longer as simple as the dispute in the Black Prison. Mu Jiaojiao's expression darkened. Although my Thousandine sect isn't an orthodox sect, and there's nothing wrong with being part of the demon sect, we're still humans, not ghosts. We can't be in cahoots with the Hades. I, Qian Yueling, can't do something like selling my soul. Qian Yueling's beautiful face turned frosty. Sectmaster, this is no small matter. Before the Sky Peak Trade Fair begins, Jiao Jiao needs to go into seclusion to calculate. Mu Jiaojiao said seriously. Go ahead. I'll protect you. No matter what the result is, you must come out of seclusion in 10 days and come with me to the Sky Peak Trade Fair. Qian Yueling nodded. Mu Jiaojiao stood up and nodded. She turned around and entered a small door at the back of the secret room. Her beautiful figure flashed into the small door, and the small door closed. Her aura disappeared in an instant. Mu Rongzhu listened to the conversation between Qian Yueling and Mu Jiaojiao. She was shocked. If what Mu Jiaojiao said was true, then the Black Prison was going to change. This place was no longer safe. Almost at the same time, Chi Kuang personally came to the Blizzard Planet to investigate Wen Mayan's whereabouts. If it wasn't for the fact that the Blizzard Planet was an important and irreplaceable transit station in the Black Prison, the furious Chi Kuang would have almost destroyed the Blizzard Planet. Chi Kuang suppressed his anger and followed the aura left behind by Wen Mayan. He walked through the place where the latter had passed. Chi Kuang didn't find too many valuable clues. He could only conclude that Wen Mayan didn't die on the Blizzard Planet. In other words, the voice transmission that Chi Kuang received 3 days ago was indeed sent by Wen Mayan. It wasn't fake. As such, Chi Kuang became even more suspicious. If Wen Mayan didn't die, then where was he now? Could he have been kidnapped halfway? Was it the Thousandine sect or the Earl's house? However, it wasn't that easy to kill Wen Mayan. The number of people who were stronger than Wen Mayan in the Thousandine sect and the Earl's house could be counted with 2 hands. If they wanted to kill Wen Mayan silently, there was no one else other than the sectmaster of the Black Prison's 3 giants and Patriarch Tianfeng. Could it be Wu Chanda and Qian Yueling? Patriarch Tianfeng could be ruled out. A combination stage old fiend wouldn't be interested in such a small character. After Chi Kuang returned to the Black Prison from the Blizzard Planet, he searched the space around the Black Prison again. He could still vaguely sense the energy waves left behind by Wen Mayan's demonic shuttle's demonic spirit engine. Chi Kuang used a secret technique to confirm that Wen Mayan's demonic shuttle had entered the Black Prison and disappeared without a trace. In other words, whether Wen Mayan was dead or alive, he was still in the Black Prison. After Chi Kuang returned to the demon sect, he immediately mobilized the entire sect's power to sweep the Black Prison. Chi Kuang separated a trace of his demonic consciousness and locked onto the energy waves when Wen Mayan's demonic shuttle's demonic spirit engine was activated. As soon as the demonic shuttle was activated, it would be immediately discovered by Chi Kuang. The demon sect didn't make a big move. Everything was carried out secretly. However, there were tens of thousands of disciples in the demon sect. More than half of them were mobilized. It was impossible for them not to be noticed. In the past few days, the undercurrent in the Black Prison was turbulent. Many hidden forces were uprooted by the demon sect. The hidden forces were the demon sect's primary target. Then, there were the powerful cultivators who came to the Black Prison with unknown identities. In just a few days, more than 100,000 cultivators were killed. Among them, there were peak divine transformation stage and early void refinement stage cultivators. Among the 4 branches of the demon sect, the leaders of the Flame Demon Sect, Gust Demon Sect, and Heavenly Demon Sect were all mobilized. Even Chi Kuang took action once to capture a Void Refinement Stage cultivator from the N Kuan Empire. Everyone in the Black Prison was in a state of panic. A few days later, there was a rumor that the demon sect was looking for someone. However, no one knew who they were looking for. In the past few days, in the taverns of the Black Prison City, the topic of conversation was related to the demon sect's actions. The Black Gold demonic shuttle company was wiped out by the demon sect. The CEO of the Black Gold demonic shuttle company, Nua Jinkan, was beheaded. One of the patrons said alarmingly, "I've known about it since 800 years ago. That was the news 2 days ago. Do you know who were the ones that were taken out yesterday?" Another drinker, B, seemed to be well informed as he said disapprovingly. The patrons around all pricked up their ears. They wanted to know the latest news. Isn't it just the Red Blade Equipment Company and the Somnian Magical Treasure Company? Another patron, C, interrupted. TSK, do you think it's just these 2 companies? I don't know if the demon sect was tricked this time. Demon Lord Chi Kwang was furious. He conducted a large-scale search. As long as it was a suspicious force or those mysterious cultivation companies, they would be visited. He would start a massacre without a word. I don't know who is so bold to kick the ass of the demon sect. This time, he kicked the tiger's ass. Patron B took a sip of wine and shook his head. Brother, apart from these 2 companies, are there any other forces that were wiped out? Patron A asked curiously. Of course. The Red Blade and Somnian are just 2 cultivation companies on the surface. The real masters behind them are controlled by powerful Void Refinement Realm cultivators. These 2 behind-the-scenes bosses usually don't show their faces. They only appeared in the Black Prison because the Tianfeng Trade Fair was about to be held. As a result, they were stopped by the Demon Lord and asked a few questions. The 2 of them thought they were powerful and said something to the Demon Lord. They were killed on the spot. Apart from these 2 other mysterious ancient sects were wiped out. One was the Miasma Rock Castle, and the other was the MO clan. Patron B did not keep them in suspense and revealed. Hiss! The entire tavern was filled with the sound of people gasping in unison. Within a few seconds, the noisy tavern fell into silence. Isn't the owner of the Miasma Rock Castle the Miasma Devil Ancestor? He's a cultivator at the middle stage of the Void Refinement Realm. He's eccentric but extremely powerful. It's said that he's on par with the sect leaders of the 3 magnates of the Black Prison. How could he be killed just like that? Someone said in disbelief. No matter how powerful the demon Miasma Ancestor is, he's not as powerful as the MO clan. They're a family of ghost cultivators. They have 3 Void Refinement Realm cultivators and have been raising ghosts for generations. It's said that there are more than 10 Grand Wizard ghosts in the clan's forbidden area. The MO clan acts like a ghost and doesn't get close to strangers. However, whoever dares to provoke them will end up in an extremely miserable state. The best outcome would be to be refined into a ghost territory. Patron A said in shock. Just how powerful the Devil Sect was now completely revealed from one side. What's the use of being powerful? In front of the Demon Sect, they're just a pile of SH*T. You can get rid of them anytime you want, Patron B said disapprovingly. Brother, the Sky Peak Trade Fair that's held once every 10 years is about to begin. Wouldn't the Demon Sect affect the turnover of the Sky Peak Trade Fair by eliminating so many forces at once? No matter how powerful the Demon Sect is, they can't afford to offend Patriarch Sky Peak, right? Patron C said in disbelief. Patriarch Sky Peak doesn't care about these trivial matters at all. Moreover, more than half of the buyers who participate in the Sky Peak Trade Fair aren't from the Black Prison. Those anonymous big shots from the 3 great cultivation empires are the real deal. Although the demon cultivators and ghost cultivators are tyrannical in the Black Prison region and have to tuck their tails between their legs in front of the 3 great cultivation empires, to put it bluntly, why are the demon cultivators and ghost cultivators gathered in the Black Prison region? Isn't it because they don't dare to go out? Even if the demon sect gets rid of a group of forces in the Black Prison, it won't affect the Sky Peak Trade Fair. How can a top-notch trade fair that's been going on for 500 years be so easily affected? Patron B looked at Patron C with a strange expression. "Brother, you're right. Let me give you a toast," Patron C said as he raised his glass. At the corner of the tavern, there were 3 patrons sitting at a 4-seater table. If Li Daocheng saw the 3 of them, he would definitely reveal a familiar and strange expression. Familiar because he knew them. Strange because why were the 3 of them together? Why were they here? /3_M. Chapter 593. The 3 customers at the table in the corner of the tavern were all women. Although they had deliberately made themselves ugly, people with discerning eyes could still see their true appearances. Without a doubt, these 3 women's beauty was top-notch. All 3 of them had a relationship with Li Daocheng, but it was reasonable to say that they didn't have much interaction with each other. At most, they could be considered as acquaintances. At this time, they appeared together in the Black Prison. If Li Daocheng saw them, he would definitely feel that it was very magical. The 3 women were Huang Jiaran, Yi Feiyue, and Goddess Hongyang. In the Black Prison, such a combination was very easy to be targeted by some evil cultivators with bad intentions. It was even very likely that they would be taken away in public. Goddess Hongyang's strength was considered a top master in the Shenghua Federation, but here, it could only be considered okay and not be a deterrent. The strange thing was that the 3 women had been sitting in the tavern for a while, but no one dared to disturb them. On the contrary, many customers who approached them immediately looked away after casting a greedy look. They didn't dare to look at them for a long time, showing an inexplicable fear. There was nothing special about the cultivation of the 3 women. Huang Jiaran was the weakest and was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. After falling in love with Li Daocheng, she cultivated desperately, hoping to catch up with Li Daocheng. Unfortunately, Huang Jiaran's talent was very limited. After 2 years of relying on a lot of cultivation resources, she only reached the middle stage of foundation establishment. Yi Feiyue had been studying at Shanghua University for a while. Due to the stimulation of her family's forced marriage, her cultivation was almost torturous. In addition, she had good talent and received a lot of spirit stones from Li Daocheng. Yi Feiyue's progress was leaps and bounds, and she also had a place in Shanghua University, which was full of strong people. Now, Yi Feiyue was already in the middle stage of Jindan. This speed of progress was considered first class in the Shenghua Federation. Goddess Hongyang was at the peak of Yuanying, and her combat power was comparable to the early stage of soul formation. However, even though Goddess Hongyang was not weak, she was still not strong enough in the Black Prison. The safety of female cultivators in the Black Prison was much lower than in the outside world. If they wanted to show their faces in public, there were only 2 situations. Or, if you're powerful enough, you're basically at the mid-divine transformation stage or above. That way, there won't be many people who dare to provoke you. Even if they were more powerful than him, they would still have to think twice. After all, once a cultivator reached the soul formation intermediate stage, the quality of their trump cards would be completely different. If they weren't careful, they could easily fail miserably. Other than that, even if you had a powerful background, no one would dare to provoke you. The strength of Goddess Hongyang, Huang Jiaran, and Yi Feiyue were obviously not outstanding enough. Moreover, they were not cultivators from the Black Prison, so it was impossible for them to have any backers. However, none of the customers in the tavern dared to provoke them. Those customers who had drunk 3 rounds and were clearly drunk also turned a blind eye to them. The reason was the clothes that the 3 of them were wearing. They were wearing the Thousand Gauze clothes that were unique to the Thousandine sect. The female cultivators of the Thousandine sect were the only group of female cultivators in the Black Prison that no one dared to provoke. Their appearance had greatly improved the living conditions of the female cultivators in the Black Prison. This made it so that those greedy demonic cultivators would not be so brazen. The Thousand Gauze clothes were intimidating enough to make all demonic cultivators shrink back. The strength that the demon sect had displayed in their fury made all the demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators in the Black Prison realize how terrifying the three heads of the demon sect were. The Thousand sect was not inferior to the demon sect. Senior Hongyang, is Big Brotherly really here? Huang Jiaran asked with an indifferent expression. I'm not very sure, but Commander Yu Yin and Li Daoyu have an extraordinary relationship. It's very likely that she said he's in the Black Prison, so it shouldn't be wrong, Goddess Hongyang said without much confidence. Yi Feiyue's finger was aimlessly moving around the edge of the wine cup. No one knew what she was thinking. She did not seem to be listening to the conversation between Huang Jiaran and Goddess Hongyang. After a while, Yi Feiyue frowned slightly. She raised the wine cup and drank all the spirit wine in one gulp. After drinking, Yi Feiyue picked up the wine pot on the table and immediately filled the cup with spirit wine. She then drank it all in one gulp. Seeing this, Huang Jiaran asked worriedly, Big Sister Yi, are you all right? Yi Feiyue's face was flushed. She glanced at Huang Jiaran and revealed a drunken smile. I'm fine. Big Sister Yi is fine. Abandoned by the family, betrayed by the father, and now kicked out of the school. Big Sister Yi has never been better. Ha ha. Big Sister Yi, you drank too much, Huang Jiaran said with heartache. No, I didn't drink too much, Yi Feiyue said as she poured another cup and drank it all in one gulp. Huang Jiaran wanted to stop her, but Goddess Hongyang said, Jiaran, let her vent. Huang Jiaran looked at Yi Feiyue worriedly and sighed. She didn't say anything else. Senior Hongyang, if your friend is busy, we can meet again tomorrow, Huang Jiaran said, afraid that Yi Feiyue's drinking would be bad for her health. The wine on the Black Prison planet was different from the outside world, and spirit cultivators were not used to it. Although it was spirit wine, there were some ingredients fermented by demonic herbs. Not only was the wine strong, it was also very concentrated. She's already here, Goddess Hongyang said with a smile as she looked outside the tavern. Murong-Zhu, dressed in a thousand gauze dress, walked in with several female disciples of the Thousand Gate. When she saw Goddess Hongyang, she immediately smiled. Many customers in the tavern avoided looking at her, afraid that they would anger this group of fiendish female cultivators. Hongyang, after so many years, you haven't changed at all, Murong-Zhu said with a smile as she looked at Goddess Hongyang. Aren't you the same? Goddess Hongyang said as she stood up. Murong-Zhu glanced at Huang Jiaran and Yi Feiyue and said, It's not convenient to talk here. Come with me. Goddess Hongyang nodded and pointed her finger. Yi Feiyue, who was still drinking, suddenly felt her vision go dark, and she lost consciousness. Huang Jiaran supported her, and a female cultivator from the Thousand Gate supported her as well. The group of female cultivators left the tavern together. During the whole process, the customers in the tavern were silent. They didn't even dare to breathe. Only when the thousand gauze dress disappeared did the tavern gradually return to its noisy state. Murong-Zhu brought Goddess Hongyang and the other two to a tavern operated by the Thousand Gate in the Black Prison City. Yi Feiyue's acupuncture point was hit by Murong-Zhu, so she couldn't wake up for a while. She would occasionally mumble a few words. Huang Jiaran sat by the bed and looked at Yi Feiyue with a pained expression. The two of them had known each other since they were young, but they didn't interact much. Although Huang Jiaran was on the Scarlet Sun Star and Yi Feiyue was on the Blue Bay Star, the Huang family also had people working in the Blue Bay Star. Therefore, Huang Jiaran often went to the Blue Bay Star with her father when she was young. The Yi family had quite a bit of influence on the Blue Bay Star. They ran several cultivation companies and had a lot of dealings with the local government. Huang Jiaran and Yi Feiyue were both direct descendants, so they naturally attended some banquets and got to know each other. However, the two of them only knew each other and didn't interact much. This time, they appeared together in the Black Prison. They were both in the same situation and were forced into marriage. Huang Jiaran was forced into marriage not long ago on the Canwu Star. At that time, she even saw Li Daochong at the miscellaneous Treasure Street auction. However, they lost contact after that. Huang Jiaran was forced to marry Jiang Ronghua, but this guy mysteriously disappeared a few days later. No one knew if he was alive or dead. The entire Jiang family emigrated and disappeared without a trace. Huang Jiran thought that with the Jiang family disbanded, her forced marriage would come to an end. Who would have thought that Huang Yuelong wouldn't give up? For the sake of his career, he found another rich husband for Huang Jiran. This time, Huang Jiran couldn't take it anymore and directly escaped. Huang Jiran grew up in a greenhouse. Moreover, the Huang family had always been an official family, so she actually had very few true friends. After escaping, Huang Jiran found that she had nowhere to go. The only person she could think of was Big Brother Li. However, Huang Jiran's wristwatch was seized by her father, so she couldn't contact Li Daochong. Therefore, Huang Jiran came to the Blue Bay Star. This was Li Daochong's hometown, so there would be a lot of clues. Huang Jiran didn't know many people in the Blue Bay Star, and Yi Feiyue was one of them. Huang Jiran used the last sound-transmitting talisman she had and tried to contact Yi Feiyue. In the end, she really managed to contact her. After meeting her, Huang Jiran found that Yi Feiyue's situation was even worse than hers. Yi Feiyue wasn't supposed to be in the Blue Bay Star. She should be studying at St. Hua University. However, half a month ago, Yi Feiyue was harassed by someone and got into a fight. As a result, Yi Feiyue seriously injured the other party. She was then punished and suspended from school for a year. The more Yi Feiyue thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Later, she received an anonymous sound-transmitting message telling her to obediently go to the Black Tortoise Star. Otherwise, there would be no place for her in the Federation. Only then did Yi Feiyue realize that she had been framed, but she couldn't do anything about it. Yi Feiyue returned to the Blue Bay Star, but she couldn't return to her family. Therefore, she secretly stayed in Li Daochong's old mansion until she received Huang Jiran's sound-transmitting message. After Yi Feiyue learned that Huang Jiran was looking for Li Daochong, she decided to follow her. The two of them went to the Li family. However, the Li family was no longer the same as before. Not only were they like the sun at high noon on the Blue Bay Star, but they were also beginning to stand out in the entire four-ring star zone. The Li family's head, Li Tianyang, had broken through to the Yuanying stage not long ago. This immediately raised the status of the Li family by a notch. Many members of the Li family had rapidly improved their strength during this period of time. Jindan cultivators were emerging one after another. The other families on the Blue Bay Star simply couldn't compete with the Li family. Due to the appearance of Yuanying cultivators, Li Tianyang had submitted an application to upgrade the cultivation planet of the Blue Bay Star to the central government. Once the application was approved, the Blue Bay Star would become the only third-class cultivation planet in the four-ring star zone. When Yi Feiyue and Huang Jiran went to the Li family, they didn't see Li Tianyang. He was in seclusion. The person who received them was Li Daochong's younger sister, Li Qingyao. However, she didn't know where Li Daochong was, and she couldn't contact Li Daochong either. If Li Qingyao didn't know where he was, then naturally, no one else would. After leaving the Li family, the two women were in a dilemma. The Federation was so big. Who knew where Li Daochong had gone? In fact, after Yi Feiyue came back, she tried to contact Li Daochong, but she couldn't send a sound transmission. Li Daochong seemed to have disappeared from the Federation. However, Yi Feiyue soon thought of Yu Yan. Back then, under Li Daochong's request, Yu Yan sent Yi Feiyue, who had broken off relations with her family, out of the Blue Bay Star into St. Hua University. Yi Feiyue had Yu Yan's contact information. After a few attempts, Yi Feiyue successfully contacted Yu Yan. This time, the two women directly got on a bus to the Black Prison. Yu Yan was arranging for Goddess Hong Yang to go to the Black Prison. Firstly, she wanted to do something, and secondly, she wanted to find Li Daochong. Recently, Qin Zhan couldn't wait any longer. Li Daochong had promised him to be the instructor of the Dragon Teeth. However, so many days had passed, and Li Daochong hadn't taken up the position at all. Only Goddess Hong Yang knew a little about the possibility that Li Daochong might go to the Black Prison, but she wasn't very sure. However, Regardless of whether Li Daochong was in the Black Prison or not, Goddess Hong Yang wanted to go to the Black Prison anyway. Yi Feiyue and Huang Zhuran volunteered to go to the Black Prison with Goddess Hong Yang. The latter knew Li Daochong's temperament very well. If she could find him with his two friends, it would be much better than appearing alone. Therefore, Goddess Hong Yang brought Yi Feiyue and Huang Zhuran together to the Black Prison. /3_M. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.